Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of STARCASTERS. We're coming back from a brief hiatus because I had to move across states, so we're back now. I'm excited to be back. I'm back here with my co-hosts Jular and Gabriel. Today we're going to be focusing on one of the Old Republic tie-in novels, the one most people say is the best one of them, which is called Deceived. We're going to talk a bit about Maul Shadowlord. And as always, this channel is affiliated with TheorySabers.com. So as we're talking about Star Wars and lightsabers, if you desire a replica, you want to go check that out. Code EvanPrince for 10% off on TheorySabers.com. We appreciate you tuning in. We're looking forward to the episode. And let's start by talking about Maul Shadowlord. So I know all three of us have seen the first episode. I've actually seen all four of the first four episodes, all the episodes that are out. And I have some pretty strong opinions on it. But before I talk about that, I want to check in with both of you on what you guys are thinking about Maul Shadowlord so far. We'll start with Gabriel.
The animation is the best of this style, easily, that they've ever done. And it's a style I don't have much fondness for. I find it does look very samey a lot of the time. And this time, I think they've managed to make it look different. This show has its own identity, unlike... as much as something like Tales of the Jedi looks more stylized and significantly better than the Clone Wars, it's still, to me, it just looks the same. This is the first time it looks different because the color is great. I love the usage of color in this. Even just this first episode, it does look really good. I think just from the first episode that I've watched, it's too early to say anything about how it's written because it's really just starting out. I might be more critical or more happy with it as I watch more. But as a first episode, it was pretty good. Great animation, I think. Great sound design, and I like the music as well. And I like all the visuals, like all the stylistic stuff, like the intro and Maul Shadowlord. The way it's all done, some really cool stuff. And I don't know if you guys have heard. We might have sent it to each other. I'm not sure about them using Sam Witwer's like scream as part of the sound for the lightsaber. Yeah, stuff like that. That is very cool. It is. So I was pretty pleased with it. It's not something that has particularly struck a chord with me, or like it's not something I was that interested in. But I think it's almost quite good because I've not went into it with like really high or low and any sort of like expectations or anything. I'm just sort of watching it as it is and enjoying it, and I thought it was a pretty good first episode.
Cool. Yep, I'm pretty much reflecting Gabriel. We both watched the first episode today. I was waiting for the whole show to come out, but I thought for this episode of the podcast, it made more sense to at least have a little bit of knowledge of the show. And yeah, pretty much just reflecting that. And like the animation, I really like the hand drawn backgrounds, especially. I was just thinking it is weird in that they are a distraction because you notice them, but it's a good distraction. So I'm not like thinking like, if you just notice it because it's bad, that's obviously not a good thing. But I'm more noticing them like, oh, they actually look really cool, and then they have like the 3D elements laid on top. It's sort of reminiscent, I guess. They're trying to harken back to like the old school method of filmmaking, right, where there would be a lot of hand-painted backgrounds. Although the difference back then was you weren't actually meant to notice those ones, I guess. But still, they're beautiful, so I'm totally okay with that. And again, with the sound design, I thought with in episode 1 there was Demas, which I guess he's a very minor character in the whole show because he dies immediately. Spoiler alert. But like it's he is I think it's a Grant or a Gra, like some kind of alien species we've seen as a Gran. That's it. Yeah. They were one of them was a pod racer. And then I think we've seen him in Lego games, but he had a really cool
Dark Forces
effect
1 and
on
2.
his voice.
That's where I always they were the Grenadiers in Dark Forces 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I think of a Grand,
most annoying ones.
I think about Nar Shaddaa, Dark Forces 2, Grands throwing grenades at me. That's where my mind associates them.
Flying everywhere. Yeah.
Anyways, go on.
But he had a really cool subwoofer effect on his voice, and it made me think like that's what an Ithorian I guess would sound like if he spoke like Galactic Basic. It would have that kind of like woofer effect in the background. I thought that was really cool. But other than that, like me and Gabriel haven't watched enough of it to really critique the writing this particularly, so we can't really speak on that yet.
I would say I agree with pretty much everything you guys said. I immediately noticed the use of the Gran alien. I don't think that they're used as much as you would expect them to be, given like how iconic the 3 eyes are, and
they weren't popping out very much, were they?
Yeah, I think it's still cool to see more aliens that we recognize from like Legends material. not to be a dangle keys in front of me type of consumer here, but that's something I was really missing with the sequel trilogy and with a lot of the Disney content is they seemed so keen on introducing a ton of new aliens that we'd never seen or heard of before. When I think what a lot of like Legends fans wanted was to see more of like what we had been reading about, but like visualized. So this show seems like it's trying to do that. The music was a standout. I think it's probably the best music we've heard in any of these Star Wars TV shows that they've done. I think the music in these TV shows has ranged from mediocre to pretty good, depending on which series we're talking about. You know, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett. But I think this is the best execution. I'm not sure who composed it, but it was a standout to me. And the sound design is excellent. Now, I'm 4 episodes in, and I can say that it's the best writing we've seen from a Disney product, at least in my opinion. It's subjective, obviously. So you guys will see that. I'm really interested to hear y'all's takes once you get to episode 4. This is easily the most I've enjoyed a Star Wars product released under Disney, not counting Jedi Fallen Order, I would say. So I'm feeling pretty excited about finishing it. It's really cool that we're getting like a darker Star Wars story. I see a comment there talking about being sick of Maul. I do wish that we could get something with this kind of style and tone and storyline kind of focused on like a darker dark side style plot, but with a different character. But I understand why it's Maul. But other than that, I'm excited. I want to wait and see how it plays out, but I'm really liking what we've seen so far.
The Sopranos in Star Wars.
Yes, that's what I thought they were going to go for more of a Godfather approach, but I did like that it was more Sopranos. Like, they weren't trying to make these. There was no like nobility or like honor between the gangsters. They were very much like they are in the Sopranos.
Yeah, they will. Just they want to get what they want basically. The best thing about the Sopranos is that sort of illusion of honor and the good side to crime. All the money and the wealth and the lifestyle and stuff like that. When underneath it, they're willing to kill their own family. Just for the tiniest things.
The Sopranos is definitely people acting like the Godfather. Like they've watched the Godfather and like, oh, we're gonna act like that, but then they're too selfish to like follow it through.
Yeah. The crime element as the show goes on is definitely becomes more of a subplot. It becomes more traditional Star Wars. There's a heavy focus on the ideology between Jedi and Sith. So that Sopranos style thing is kind of interwoven through there, but it's definitely more of a subplot. I don't know if you guys read this or not, but Dave Filoni has basically all but said he is taking what he knew George wanted to do for the sequel trilogy with Maul and Talon and the power vacuum and just inserting it years before where he can make it make sense in the Disney canon. But this is his way of trying to execute on the story thread ideas that Lucas had come up with for episode 7, 8, and 9. So it's definitely much more about the Jedi than I think people were expecting as you get into it.
I'm totally behind that.
It's nice to see that story in a way.
In some kind of way.
I'm someone, I prefer the story of the EU books to what George would have done with the sequel trilogy, but I still would like to see it, and I still would have liked to have those films, even if it was just for me like another version of events and whatever I prefer. So I think it's nice to get something based off those ideas rather than have it just be this thing that we hear about all the time but never see. It is satisfying to see Maul and this character that will end up being like Talon, but again, I'm not like someone that's going to get disappointed that she's not like Talon in the comics, because that was not really what George was ever going to do either, other than having them look similar. I don't think he was he was going to sit down and read Legacy and say, okay, let's prepare to write Talon right. I think he just liked the look of her because he's a very visual guy.
Yeah, I agree. I think he saw the red dark side Twi'lek and said and like with the black markings, he's like, that looks kind of like Maul. Those would be like a good pairing. That would work. And they were like, but she's like 1,000 years in the future, George. He's like, nuh-uh.
Yeah.
I hope that they use the name Talon. I know, Gabriel, you're not a big fan of bringing stuff from the EU into Disney canon, which I respect. But
this is a case where I
was
wouldn't
about to say
mind as
Talon's
much,
like
to be honest.
1,000 years in the future. She's part of like the Cade. That's
Yeah.
Cade Skywalker story, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody
And
cares.
honestly,
Nobody cares
like
about
that story, it's it's a great story, right? But Talon is like a tiny, tiny character. She is not really of much importance.
That character
It's
is
not like
only. There's very obvious
it's not
reasons
like it
why
would
that
be
character is
bringing
as
Mara in,
popular as that character is, and it's not because of the writing. It's not because of the story. I mean, if we just being honest,
she is a fine character in that comic story. She's not like nobody reads it and in their bright mind thinks, "Oh my god, my favorite Star Wars villain is Darth Talon." You just don't. She's like such a minor character. Yeah.
Following what you just said, Evan, that's actually true for Maul up until from the Phantom Menace, right? That's
That
the
is
only
true.
reason he was popular. It's just because of how he looks. So it makes sense that they would be paired.
It's like Boba Fett. It's the same thing. Star Wars Star Wars is so good at designing interesting or visually appealing characters to the point where it's very easy to just not care who they are or what they're about, because you see them and you're like, I look at Revan. I never understand how Revan is such a face of KOTOR when you see that design like twice in the entire game.
I was shocked. He is so iconic and popular. You play KOTOR 1, which he's like on the picture of, and obviously spoilers.
He's
the
not on the
revelation is
picture.
that you are him. But for the trailer, I'm thinking for the remake, like
for the remake,
put him as like the whole point of the remake. Yeah, that's what what I did is I thought I was going to wait until the remake, and then eventually I realized it's never coming out, so I'm going to play the original.
Probably a good call.
And I start playing the original, which obviously I love, and I love 2 as well. You realize, you see Revan like you said, like once or twice, and obviously, as I said earlier, spoiler alert, you are Revan, but that iconic, the mask, the costume, that is like such a non-thing in those games. Like it doesn't really, barely see it.
I think you see that costume design 3 times in 3 specific cutscenes for a total of like maybe 3 minutes of screen time. Maybe that's being generous. In the opening, in the flashback where Bastila confronts him, in the Dantooine trailer when he and Malik are finding the star map on Dantooine, and in the reveal when the character takes the mask off. I'm pretty sure that's the only time you see that character design. But everybody knows that design and they love it just because it looks cool.
Yeah,
And
I guess
it's a great design.
kind of proves Stan Lee's like what Stan Lee said about Spider-Man, where like Spider-Man worked because anyone could imagine themselves under the mask. Like Revenant has that same thing. Like when you played the character, even though you only had like 8 faces to choose from, anyone can superimpose themselves onto Revan because they're choosing his voice lines. And then I guess you like link yourself to that character more, even when he's under the mask, I guess.
I think we all felt similarly in the Revan episode, where it's like Revan is probably more of an interesting character when you make that character yourself in the game.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes Revan such a good character. You can't deny that Revan, like some people would say, he's not that interesting, and say, it's just because it's how you play him, but that was all still written by people. So it's still a well-written character because you are performing all this stuff that has been, written for this character. So I would still say, Revan in the First Knights of the Old Republic game is an amazing character, but I think part of the appeal is that, like I said, you get to play him how you want. So you get to make him into the character that you like. So it doesn't, when you do a character like that, it's just not going to translate as well to, giving them a proper canon character. It's just not really possible to satisfy everybody.
And speaking of Old Republic timelines and characters that are more known for looking cool than anything else, let's talk about Star Wars Deceived.
Yes. I mean, Malgus fits that perfectly. I think the less you know about Malgus, the cooler he is. And actually, we could tie it into Maul because it was actually, as I learnt today from Wikipedia, which is only the most accurate of sources. I'm sure there was a source attributed to it. But apparently the original author that they contacted to write this book was James Luceno, who is the author of the Plagius novel and who wrote the original backstory for Maul. Apparently that backstory was meant to be Malgus's backstory, but for whatever reason it was denied because it was too dark, was the reasoning that Luceno gave why he wasn't allowed to write the book, and then they gave it to Paul S. Kemp instead.
Which is crazy. I have nothing against Paul S. Kemp, by the way. I've read a couple of his novels. I think he's fine. But I am definitely more of a fan of Lucino's writing style and Lucino's perspective on the Star Wars universe. And given how much nuance they clearly wanted to have in this book between the negotiations of the Jedi and the Sith and then like the taking Coruscant hostage, I think Lucino probably could have executed that in a more nuanced way. That makes sense. So I was really frustrated when you told me that. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I think we all
what could have
felt
been,
that,
yeah.
I think we all felt that this book had so many, great ideas, some good characters, but it was also paper thin. And like Evan just said with Lucino, the negotiations between Jedi and Sith in a Lucino book would be a fully fledged story.
He would have killed it.
With so many layers, and it would have been so interesting that you actually really care about the politics of this, of this negotiation, where in this novel, you see it for
actually
like
happens
a minute,
behind closed doors.
and then
It's like in a
you
game
keep
where they walk
hearing
into a room
bits.
and the doors close and you're not allowed to see what happens in that room. That's the politics in this book.
Yeah.
Like they walk into a room with the Jedi walk into the room with a Sith, and then you're left out of it, which makes sense because that's the perspective of one of the characters that we follow, Aaron Lanier. But still, it's frustrating because, as you said, Lucino would have made that like a really interesting part of the book, but we just have no idea what's going on in that room.
Yeah, and I will give Kemp some credit on the Aaron character. Just one more thing about the politics. It really felt like I'm not going to say Kemp was phoning it in or anything, but it definitely felt like he was just establishing all of the political nuances of the story because they needed to be established and not because he was trying to do something nuanced or interesting with the politics. It's more like, this is what's happening and this is, I kind of have to do this. He clearly was, the thing he wanted to write was Erin's character, her story. And that is it's either the most interesting or the second most interesting part of the book for me is her kind of push and pull with dealing with the whole Jedi attachments thing, dealing with the emotional regulation, accepting and becoming a Jedi. There is kind of a little bit of a thing. It's like, is she like flirting with the dark side? What are we doing here? The conversation she has with other Jedi where it's like they're trying to explain very real truths to her, but she's not ready to hear it. That part I felt was realistic. So full credit to Kemp for that. Like that was clearly where his heart was. I'm just thinking, I think I've said on the podcast before, one of my all-time favorite Star Wars books is called Cloak of Deception. I think it might be the most underrated Star Wars book. It's a prequel to Phantom Menace. It's got Qui-Gon. It's a Chancellor Valorum. It's a Lucino book, and the politics in that novel are so compelling because Lucino knows how to write that.
Yeah, Kemp was better known for writing before this Dungeons and Dragons, like Forgotten Realms universe books. So I guess like that fits more into this, where you're not expecting like deep politics in those books. Generally, it's just more like fantasy kind of stuff, and that's what he's strong at. He wrote the Cross Current book, which I think was a tie-in with Jedi Academy.
It was. That's
the
a
game.
Jaden Core book, and I like that's one of the ones
Jaden Core.
It's one of the ones I read. I like that one.
Well, according to Kemp,
It's
Zered
right,
Core, the mercenary in this book, is an ancestor of Jaden. That's not confirmed anywhere. It's just like his headcanon, but I thought that was an interesting tie-in between his two novels.
Yeah, that's a billion years apart, though. Of course, the main villain in Cross Current is actually an Old Republic era Sith.
An Old Republic.
Yeah, he gets like time skipped or whatever. He gets Dave Filoni time skipped from the Old Republic to the original trilogy timeline.
Yeah, it's after Legacy of the Force, those Jaden
What's
Core
up,
books, which is such a crazy jump. And I've heard they're like okay.
They're fun.
I think I've never heard of I've heard of people liking like Kemp's work, but I've never heard like it being like the strongest or most like intellectual or like challenging of Star Wars.
It's
works.
just
It's all
satisfactory.
very surface level.
Yeah, I think we all
that's
said
the
like
thing,
we liked the book, like we thought it was good, but it's just nothing more than good. Like I'll never read it again. I can say that. I don't regret reading it, but I'll never read it again.
There's a possibility because I didn't give it a full read, like a full like page to page read, like I probably should have. I might revisit it sometime down the line. I might be like, I'm gonna reread all the Old Republic books, but it didn't. the fact that I just read most of it and was skimming parts of it to get through mainly the mercenary story, which just was not grabbing me. I found myself just being like, okay, let's get back to Malgus and Aaron, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll
Well,
read
that's
it
what
again.
we all agreed on behind the scenes, is that if we all struggle to read through the book, I mean, that says something, right? If we're all like, oh, the opening was great, and then we all kind of go radio quiet for a few weeks because like we're all struggling on the middle, that does say something.
Speaking of the
'cause
opening,
we all enjoyed it, but
not enough.
We were all saying we've all been busy, but if
Yeah.
we would have enjoyed it, we all probably would have found the time
Yeah,
to get through it
exactly.
long before. Like, I would have had this done days ago if it captured me, but it just it was all right, you know. It was a good book, but it wasn't like didn't grab my attention.
I got through the Phantom Menace novelization audiobook in like a month, and I started Rogue Planet, I think, in October, and I'm only just now about to finish it. Because it's
better than that.
Because if it's fucking boring, it's just you don't.
Yeah.
You're not like, oh, can I make some time for that? You're more like, you know, I guess I'll.
I suppose
I guess
I'll
I'll take a
chapter
look
of
at
this.
it.
That's probably not the praise that Kemp wants. It's like, this book is better than one of the worst books
Also,
Kemp's ever read. But
I don't think that his chapters aren't long enough. That's a full length novel, and there's only 13 chapters. I'm sorry, his chapters are too long. Is what I
his
mean to
chapters
say.
are too long.
We needed
the way
more
he
breaks.
splits his chapters, he jumps between the characters. I feel like those could have been chapter breaks, honestly, a lot of the
Yes.
time.
I think-
You'll get like 10 pages on a character and then you jump to another one. And so each chapter will be like 40, 50 pages long.
That is
as you're
fucking
going through
insane.
this.
And that's really another that was another thing really like keeping me from wanting to read it, is because I like to read a chapter. That could have been like a 24 chapter book, easy. And it was
I ended up
13.
breaking it to like, I'm gonna read this character segment, but then sometimes the character segment will be like 3 paragraphs on a page, and then you go to the next one, so you can't even use that as a consistent like guide.
Yeah,
So it was quite annoying
I
to
like
read.
chapters in the like 10 to at most 20 page range. 20 pages, that'll be like a long chapter where something big is happening, and other times just like 10ish pages is. And I think a lot of authors have no problem doing that. A lot of the authors I like to read have no problem telling massive stories with chapters that aren't that long.
Short
You don't need them to be
chapters
that long.
Well, yeah.
are
A
the
lot of
bomb.
my books are like 50 chapters long, and it's just because they're all really short. Like you know.
Yeah.
I think that's ideal as well. If you're reading it like, you know, doing one chapter a day, you can plod along quite nicely like that.
I love a good short chapter. That's one thing I'll give Rogue Planet. It's got like 63 chapters or something crazy like that.
Nice.
So, you know, it is much nicer when you can just kind of, you know, clock in for like, you know, 10, 15 minutes and just really take your time reading the chapter. When the chapter's that long, you start to kind of like skip through little pieces of dialogue, and you start to, at least me, I start to kind of like drift. I'm like, this is just going on and on. Give me a break here. A
That was
literal
what was
chapter
weird about
break.
I guess it was the pacing of the book, because like there were a lot of times where I thought the tension was decent, and like there were definitely sections where it had that one more page factor. Like there were sections like when they were escaping the tractor beam and that kind of stuff. Like, I want to know what happens. But then like on the larger scale, I just feel like the book failed, because when you put it down, it was never like, oh, I want to pick it up and see what happens next. You know, you get through that tension of that section and you're like, okay, I'm gonna put it down now, and then not touch it for a few more days.
Which I think
It was paced very weirdly, I think. It was like
another
just
idea.
the level of stuff that was going on was so weird.
An idea I
Something
had
will
about
like ramp
that,
you up with like tension and pressure and stuff, and then it just drops off a cliff, and then like nothing happens for 50 pages, and then it goes back up again. It was very up and down.
One thing we all agreed on early on was that the opening of the book was killer. Really strong opening. And something that occurred to me was I feel, I said this, you know, in the group chat. I said that it almost feels like it's so good not because of Kemp, but because it was probably pre-established and he just took advantage of it. But it really feels like that scene should have been the end of the book, and the rest of the book should have been everything leading up to that. We should have been seeing Malgus plan the deception. That was another thing I said. It's like the title Deceived. You figured that out by like the middle of chapter 2. You're like, oh, they got deceived.
Exactly.
So
it's what Evan's talking about there is the trailer for the Old Republic, which is called Deceived. It's called the Deceived trailer, and it is Kemp essentially novelizes that entire fight, and that's why the opening is so good. Basically, if you've watched that trailer, you've watched the best part of the book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's really good in the book.
Fantastic.
It
But
is as
It's just-
thrilling
I have
as
to
the
say,
actual trailer
I have to
itself.
point out, I was blown away. I loved it, especially you do the audiobook and listen to Mark Thompson's amazing performance and hear the way that he plays Malgus.
yeah.
When that security guard comes in and says, like, stop, and Malgus says to himself, too quiet from here, like, I can't stop. I can never stop. So that was like, oh my god, that is the coolest thing ever. And that
Mark
set him
Thompson
up as
is
like
the
this
goat,
really
dude.
amazing character. And he is. He is the best audiobook
I've-
of Star Wars,
I've
I think.
marked-
He is incredible.
I've probably sank dozens and dozens of hours just listening to him do Star Wars audiobooks, and yeah, the
It's like
Deceived
listening
audiobook's
to
great.
like a drama with him. It's like
Yeah.
listening to a drama with him because the voices he does for all the characters, it's like he's 50 different people. I
and
don't
the
know how he does
effects
it. It's so
that he puts on
Yeah.
Malgus's voice, just really the extra mile. The Deceived audiobook, highly recommend, super good, just because the quality of the actual execution of the audiobook. But the whole thing about it was the cover art, the title, and the intro makes you get this idea that this book is about the Sith invasion of Coruscant, which is the coolest idea. Like that's something I want to read about. But it's not. It's just a hook to get you into this other story Kemp wants to tell about Aaron seeking revenge for her dead master, which, okay, cool enough, but that should be like a subplot. Like, I want to see the build-up to the deception. I want to see the planning to deceive the Jedi. I want to see the Jedi...
I guess you could say that you were deceived.
I
as
was
well.
deceived. I want
Yeah.
that there's such good potential there to show like the Jedi's naivety about
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that shows that you're on Malchus's side. You're like, I want the war to keep going.
No,
'Cause
it's
the whole
not-
point of them invading Coruscant was that they didn't want. Basically, the Sith didn't invade Coruscant for actually taking the planet.
No,
they just
it was
want
leverage.
to sweeten the deal, isn't it? That's all they want. Whereas, I mean, I agree that I want to see more of like the actual invasion and the fight. I agreed with Aaron when the Jedi said, like, oh, we're not going to retaliate. I was, like, pissed. I was like, you need to retaliate. They just attacked the Jedi Temple. You can't be like, okay, back to peace talks.
Yeah, that was crazy. But that entire first chapter feels like it should have been, like, closing it on the finale. Like, that's one of the things, because you're looking at the Jedi, you're looking at their response to it. First off, you're like, you guys let yourselves be deceived, which it's like poetry, it rhymes. That echoes to the prequel trilogy because the Jedi philosophy is so gracious. It's so benefit of the doubt. It's so assume the best, which I love it. It's why the Jedi way is the right way. It's why it's special, but it's also why they got deceived. Like, all of that is the stuff that I wanted to see, but it's not there because Kemp wanted to tell his special story of his special Jedi, which clearly he was playing favorites because the mercenary takes up half the book and it's just not it. I don't think he cared that much about that story, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He has
well,
no
essentially
idea what's going on
characters
with the Jedi and the
to
Sith, and he has
describe
no interest.
Yeah. To describe for the viewers, there's a Jedi called Aaron Lanier, who's a woman, and then we have a male mercenary called Zered Kor. They had previously had a love interest off screen, off page, I guess. So they don't need to build up any romance in the book. He doesn't have to bother with that. He just says like, oh, they were together in the past.
And then there's like a
they're
thing at
in the
very
game.
end.
Yeah, they're in the game, and Zira's daughter named Ara. They're actually in the MMO. You can go meet them. You can meet the family. There's like a sequence where Aaron finds out that Malgus is still alive, or like he's returned, and it's like a dramatic part of one of the stories. I think it's the Jedi Knight story in the game. So that I feel is the reason why they are essentially the main characters of the book. Malgus isn't really the main character in his own book. He kind of is. Like there's 3 main characters, but I assume that's the reason. I would believe that the way it would have been set up is that surely Kemp would have been told about these characters beforehand. I doubt they would have added them to the game afterwards because, you know, obviously games take a lot longer to make than write to the book.
Yeah.
So I guess he had either they'd said like, hey, these are your characters of the book, or he had a roster of characters to choose from. Clearly he wasn't that interested in writing Malgus that much, or he wasn't allowed to, because as we said, Lucino wasn't allowed to actually write what he wanted to write because they said it was too dark. So it's possible that, you know, a lot of what we don't like about the book was just hamstrung by BioWare saying like, no, you know, this is what you're allowed to write.
I suspect that, by the way. I suspect a lot of that was because I actually, if we do get around to reading the other Old Republic books, I feel like we're going to get flimsy, almost non-consequential stories that don't affect the wider game universe because they're just meant to be an arrow to point you to play the game. They're gonna be like, oh, this is cool. This cool little stories, cool little environments. Don't you want to go see this environment? It's like, well, I would really love to see this story have like a larger impact. It's like, no, you can't do that because the game is what matters. But cool environment. You're reading it? You want to go play it?
Yeah, it's essentially that. Like, you know, they make a point to be like, hey, this farm on Dantooine, don't you want to go there? And that's where like Aaron and Zed end up being, like that kind of stuff, you know. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of that going on. What were your thoughts on the character arcs? Because I guess there are only 2 arcs. Like Zed ends the book the same way he starts it. Although there's this weird bit where Zed is a hardened soldier essentially, like a commando. He's killed loads of people. He mentions that himself. But he kills this one guy in, it's not even cold blood, in warm blood, and then that apparently switches in his brain and like, oh, I'm a murderer now. But even at the time, he's like, well, I'm not really a murderer because, you know, this guy's threatened my daughter. Like, it was very weird. It felt like they needed a reason. Yeah, they needed a reason for Zed to be sad, I think.
That would only be an interesting conflict if that character was like a Jedi. Then I think it would sanction like the way that he feels. But as a guy who's not a Jedi, doesn't have that sort of philosophy, who was a soldier, who has a man in front of him that if he lets live, will possibly get his daughter killed. You know, I expect he might feel a bit of remorse about having to kill someone. He might not enjoy that. I get all that.
Yeah.
But it played it as if like he had, in his eyes, he had become a murderer for saving his daughter's life. I keep in mind, like I said, this is a soldier who has killed so many people and doesn't feel that there is no point in the book where we get an impression that he feels any guilt about any of the things that he did at war.
He's also worked for the Exchange for years at this point as a smuggler, as a mercenary, doing like criminal activities, like illegal stuff, and he feels like somewhat bad, but he's also like, my daughter needs to eat and I want to get her prosthetic legs. Also, that's his motivation, by the way. His daughter lost her legs and he lost his wife in a car crash. So that's his motivation.
Coruscant insurance must not be good or something.
No, but like this is not like, you know, like you said, if it was a Jedi, it would make sense. But this isn't really a morally good guy, you know.
In his first scene,
it's very weird for that to be.
He gets attacked by some mercs in his first scene, and then he flies up, and then he makes the decision after he's already escaped to turn around and fly back over him and blast them to pieces from his. Like he turns around and he's like shooting them from his side. That's not very honorable. He's like, I feel bad about shooting them like ants. I don't believe that guy would feel bad killing somebody he thought even could threaten his daughter. That's the guy who was like, nah, dude, you're dead. I've literally, I've bullseyed human beings in my ship just because they pissed me off. Like I've been on a getaway. I've escaped and made the decision to turn around and kill them. That's his opening scene.
Very much. It felt like a decision, like, oh, he's actually meant to be a good guy in the game. Okay, like quick, let's make him feel guilty right at the end. Yeah, that's what, definitely what that
two
felt
things.
Like.
It's like George moving Han's head.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, Han shouldn't be that easy
to say that I just thought of. One was the whole Jedi plot reminded me quite a bit of the Darth Bane books. It felt quite a bit of like some of the Jedi plots that's in Rule of Two and you know, in just in that Darth Bane series, but done like a far less interesting level. And another thing was about, you know, we talked about how good the Sith deck in Coruscant was, right? And how that was like one chapter. Even if that was just going to be the beginning of a book, I have read books in Star Wars and elsewhere where that big battle is the beginning, but it could have been like 150 pages or like 100 to 150 pages. And even if the rest of the book was going to be like a more of a personal story about this Jedi and Malgus, you could have still had a really big battle at the beginning. And I think, again, with Lucino, I think there would have been a whole... You could make such a fascinating plot of the Jedi then saying, what do we do now? Because we get a little bit of the debate between them and, you know, that the Jedi that we follow are saying, you know, are we not going to attack? And saying, should we attack? Should we try and make peace? And so that could be a whole plot itself. That could be a whole debate. And I think it should have been. The whole battle at the beginning, if you, again, as we said, that would have been a great end. But if you're going to do that at the beginning, that could have been a really, really great opening. But that could have been like the whole first act. You can tell it interesting where the explosive action is part of the first act. and that the final act is more down to earth, personal stakes. I feel like that's what should have been done. And I guess you could argue we got that, but I think it's the fact that it was one chapter for such like an enormous thing. I feel like that should have been way longer. We should have gotten like the Sith making their way onto Coruscant, how they all got there, how they all, how they tricked them. We should have had them setting up the meeting and the Jedi saying we're going to have this meeting, the Sith side of it, and we should have gotten all of that.
I guess
but,
we got a little bit of it
chapter.
when Malgus went to the hospital. Like, you get a bit more like the boots on the ground kind of feel. I mean, even vice versa. Even if you have no Jedi in the story, just the Sith politics. Like, Kemp did a little bit on the Sith politics, although I feel like it was a bit like neither here or there, because he introduces these two characters, which I can't even remember their names, like Angrel and Andaras or something like that. But all the names in this book are really similar. Like, there's Aaron Lanier, and then the love interest is Liana. It's like a lot of the names are very similar. It really confused me at times. Like, his daughter is Ara, and then like his love interest is Arin. I got tripped up a lot reading this. But yeah, there's just like the Sith politics going on, which I feel like could have really been bulked out, and that could have been its own thing. Like the Sith politics around the invasion, and that Malgus doesn't like that he is being deceived that this isn't a real invasion, that this is just a power play, and how he can, in the fights he has with the other Sith about that.
We talked down
that all
on
actually
the Revan novel.
Malgus. That all lessened Malgus as a character for me, because I feel like this guy that seems like such a good villain is sort of stuck playing.
He's a berserker. Like that, if you look at it from like a fantasy side, he doesn't come across that intelligent. Like, he doesn't care about like the wider picture. He's like, I just want to fight. I just want to fight. That's it. How dare you want to end the war? That's all I want to do is continue fighting. That's why in the game he makes a rogue faction. Like, he just leaves, like the Empire make peace. He makes his own little rogue faction and starts fighting, because that's what he wants to do. That's all he cares about.
I was going to say, we may have talked down on the Revan novel, but Carpetian really nailed the Sith politics of that book. And we don't get many books where we see Sith politics. I mean, we got Bane, we got the Bane trilogy, and we've got Revan, and all Carpetian. So,
yeah. That's why, like, with this, the politics in this, where Malgus, in the epilogue, Malgus kills one of the Sith that he had like some fights with earlier in the book. But it just means nothing, because who is Adras to the Emperor? Who is Angrel to the Emperor? We have no idea where they are in the totem. There's thousands of Sith at this point. Are these the bottom tier guys? Are these the high tier guys? We don't know.
Wait,
so
Malgus
it doesn't
even
feel that
says
consequential.
To him, Malgus even says to him, like, oh yeah, nothing will happen about this, because, they won't really care. So, why did it matter anyway?
Why even bother?
Killed him at the beginning.
I think it's because in an earlier chapter, you see Malgus like contemplating that he doesn't like the guy very much, and that's like what we get. He's like, I don't like that guy. And the epilogue is like, I am truly unleashed because I killed my love interest. What was her name? Liana?
Yeah, Liana,
Liana?
I guess it does show he is like completely delusional, because he thinks like, oh, I'm going to kill Adras, and then I'm going to get the Angrel, and then I'm going to kill the Emperor. And I'm like, bro, there's like 40,000 Sith up to that. Like where you going? You can't just jump from this like lieutenant to like, oh, I'm going to go up to the Emperor.
And a pretty
We've already seen
measurable
Scourge
power
try it, and
difference.
Scourge tried it with Revan and the Exile. Didn't work. Like, fully delusional if he thinks he can just pull that off.
You would think you would know about that.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe him and Nihilus could have an eating competition and see which one passes out first, but that's your best bet.
Yeah. So
I think everything.
I guess that's meant to show that
very...
Malgus is just completely delusional.
I think I think what they were going for is, after killing Liana, his love interest, he is now like, I'm going to just start killing Sith and doing whatever I want, and allude to the fact that he's going to make his faction.
Rogue. Yeah. Grey Sith, as we said in the first episode. Grey Sith. Yeah.
Also, it's not really related, but it's pretty clear that like they were trying to recapture the Malak design with Malgus when they made him, right? He looks like him.
Oh,
Malak,
like
Malgus.
Yeah.
Like they were like, yo, Malak was a good villain for let's do that, but like
that's why I'm disappointed
different.
We didn't get any backstory in this. Like, the only backstory we have is that he killed his housemaid because he wanted to, like, and he just didn't care. Like, he's a psychopath at like 10 years old or whatever. That's about it.
Compared to like when you do,
I felt like there was meant to be a relationship. Why isn't he looking up to Malak? Why isn't there any of that? Yeah, go on.
When you do Ben, you get like his father beating him, and the hatred between him and his father, and the years of that pent up anger, and that really is what explodes into him becoming this horrible killer. With Malgus, we don't really know. Apart, it's just very like surface level. That is the perfect way I would describe this book on the whole, is surface level. There's like no depth to any characters or any plot lines, and the thing is that the plot lines of characters are pretty good, but there's just not much to them. And like we're saying with Malgus, there's not much to him. The Jedi character,
Lyanna, I felt
it's
had
so
like a
predictable.
we knew more about Lyanna than a lot of the characters, like through Aaron, through Malgus,
Yeah.
like that she was a slave that he bought. It is very much like Shmi, but I guess obviously a lot more dark than what happened to
like
Shmi. But he
Poetry
bought
Rhymes.
this slave, and then and then essentially married her. They're not married, but he fell in love with this slave, and she's like his sidekick. But she's also like it's like a completely messed up relationship. It's very much like not good love because he just beats her and like is really evil to her a lot of the time based on what Aaron says. So really messed up. But what I found interesting was that when he's fighting Aaron at the end, he gets more powerful because of love, but he is literally too blinded by like the fear and the hate, the fear of Lyanna dying, of Lyanna being taken from him, and then like hate for other Sith, that he doesn't notice that he only beat Aaron because he saw Lyanna, and like he gets full of like his body gets full. I feel like it's explained like feels like so much love in him that when he shoots the lightning, it's the most powerful he's ever been. But he doesn't notice like, oh, love was actually the reason why he was so powerful.
Is that he was held back because of her presence there.
Yeah.
He doesn't recognize
So he
it.
ends up killing her. Very
I
much
feel like
Force
that-
Awakens.
Yeah, that whole thing of killing her for, because she holds her back, I heard that was such a leap. Like, I didn't buy that. Like, it just seemed to come out of nowhere. And
It
again,
definitely was
I didn't
partly, I think,
she
as well, like, he feared so much of her being taken from him, like, killed by someone else. It's very much like, oh, if I kill her, then it's my fault, and I can feel the hate,
nothing to worry about.
rather than, like, yeah.
And I mean, that is very, like, they don't explore that so much with the Old Republic kind of way of becoming a Sith, but that does resonate with Legends being like, in order to become a Sith, you have to kill somebody you love. You know what I'm saying? So that does kind of resonate with that. I mean, it's very Cadus killing Mara Jade coded.
I found it interesting they
Even
brought
though
up
he
an
didn't care about her at that
ancient
point.
Korriban practice about how to get strong with the dark side, which is where they would purge their bodies in fire. And I'm like, oh, well, Vader just accidentally like refound an old Korriban practice.
There you go, Vader.
I was going to say about Malgus. He does feel like Malgus feels like they tried to capture like the best of Vader and the best of Malak, and just ended up making somebody without much of his own identity. Like his armor feels a bit Vader-y, and then he's got his whole the breather, which is a bit more like Malak.
And he's like 7 foot tall and like all that kind of stuff. He's really strong.
He looks. He does not give off main villain energy. He gives off like Darth Scion energy. He's very much like he's the brute that you got to worry about. But like, there's no nuance
lines up
to his
with
motivation.
him in the game, of course, and him in the grand scheme of the Empire, or the grand scheme of the Old Republic Empire. So I guess that makes sense. Like, he isn't. The cover of the game would make you think, oh, this is the Vader of the book. Like, no, this is like. The mole this is the mole Shadow Lord of the book, he's like not really a big player.
Yeah, he looks really
I think
cool.
it's a problem with the
That's it.
I think it's a big problem with the cover, actually, having him like that. And I think it is a problem with a lot of book covers now. For example, they're re-releasing James Luceno's Labyrinth of Evil, which is like, it ends when Revenge of the Sith starts. I'm sure you know a bit about it, but that is like they're re-releasing it, and the cover is just Anakin's face. That is not a book just about Anakin, although he plays a big part in it. It's a massive book about Grievous and Obi-Wan.
Grievous's face was on the cover of the original.
Yeah, in the original, it was Grievous and Anakin. And
it was
for
a
some
big
reason,
Grievous
all
face.
they've got now is Anakin, which is
That's
like
why the New Hope style of doing like covers or posters is perfect, because it has everything on it. Like, at least if you put everything on it at different sizes, you can be like, hey, this is everything you're gonna see in this book, and then you won't feel like, oh, this isn't what I bought. You go in being like, oh, I'm going to see all these different things, and you will.
Avengers Infinity War style. Just put all of their faces on there.
Every single character. All the
IG-88
every named character.
Yeah. And I want every planet as well, all dotted around all the planets that you're going to see as well.
Every spaceship, all the droids.
Yeah.
This is unrelated.
All the lightsabers and all the blasters.
It's completely unrelated, but the like 2 or 3 days ago, somebody commented on my Shadows of the Empire retrospective video, being like, "What are you talking about? IG-88B? It's just IG-88." And I was sitting there, I was like, "I know you think you're right, but you couldn't be more wrong. There's been instances where people comment on my Star Wars videos and they like try to correct me on lore and just show that they're missing knowledge on lore.
Well, every time I read
You
some
get
of
that
these
a lot
lore
in
books,
the
you learn something else. Like, I never knew about that collarbone practice, which, I mean, Kemp might have just made that up for this book, where, like, the Sith used to purge themselves in fire.
I think he
But
made
it
that
was
up
just
for this
before-
book, but it is cool.
Yeah. But
I'm
now it's
okay
cool,
with
and you
that,
can be like, oh, the Vader's accidentally done that. I mean, it just ties in the Darth Scion, right? Like, lots of pain equals good for Sith. That's like actually the recipe for immortality, as we learned in the Revan book. They just inject themselves with acid, and then now you're in so much pain all the time, you're immortal.
Yeah, it's Vader walking
Yeah.
around in constant agony.
And also, it changes the perspective of how you think about, like, I mean, obviously we know that Sidious was probably lying about immortality, but, like, obviously Padme was not going to survive like whatever fucked up Sith practice was going to make her immortal.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah.
But, assuming that that's even
Well, can you
real.
imagine? Considering the Legends lore, can you imagine if after, if Padme had survived, he'd said, "Okay, so we're going to clone Padme, and then we're going to
Transfer
learn to
consciousness,
transfer
yeah.
her essence into
Yeah.
a new body." And what is going on?
You know,
Exactly.
Come to think of it, it is kind of odd that
It would be a
Anakin-
good Frankenstein story, actually, I think. In
It
that,
is-
like, she would be, like, reject the body and reject that she's been brought back.
Do you guys think
There'd
that?
be something to do there.
You guys think it ever occurred to Anakin that he could just like hit up Kamino and like clone Padme, and it's like, oh, I'll have another one just in case, like Boba, an unaltered clone of Padme. He's like,
I'm surprised none of the Vader comics have actually broached that. I guess it wouldn't feel right for his character, because I think, Vader very much wants to almost use Padme's death. I mean, how Malgus uses Lyanna's death to be like to fill him with hate and sorrow all the time.
I mean, true,
Yeah,
but
I'm surprised that they've.
I'm talking about like
not tried that.
pre-fall Anakin, like during the Revenge of the Sith when he's
Oh,
having
right, yeah.
dreams. He's like, you've
Yeah,
been
why wasn't he
serving with
just, like,
clones for years.
cut
Why
a
won't
bit
you
of her
just
hair?
like? He's like, just in case. Let me just go get another
Yeah,
one
yeah.
started.
Let me go get a backup one.
Yeah,
Yeah, just make a
backup.
patch of
Second
1,000.
hand.
Why not? Innit?
I'll call her Padme. I'll just add an extra A. Padme.
Like Leuk.
Leuk. I read a
you
theory
seen,
somewhere that the additional U isn't actually there. It's just Zahn giving a distinguishing
So you know which one he's
letter for
talking
the
about.
reader.
Yeah, I
but
don't
that
think they're pronouncing him like
that's-
Luke.
Yeah, but that it's actually
he did a satire short story called An Apology, where he just sort of dissed even his own stuff, the entire EU, from the perspective of a third Luke clone watching everything onwards, and
And it
he's
has 3 U's
Luke.
in the name.
He's got 3 U's, and he talks about how they've cloned like Jason multiple times, and because like from Young Jedi Knights to New Jedi Order to Legacy of the Force, of how much he changes, he just says that like they're all different clones of him, and it's stuff like that. He just makes up loads of like nonsense lore, and it's basically like saying I'm sorry for everything.
Don't they go back in time and start the Clone Wars, and they actually are the clones in like this alternate Clone Wars or something like that?
Not that I know.
Wasn't that part?
I
of
don't,
it?
know, I don't know what you're referring to on that one.
I thought that was when
The only
when
thing
I
I
read
can-
like the lore page of the apology, like a while ago. I thought that was like the ending of the book,
Oh.
was that like they all went back in time and they were the clones in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. It's been a
kinda
while since I
fire.
read it, but it's totally bonkers. It is
Yeah,
like-
it's obviously it's all just
satire.
like like an April Fool's kind of thing.
But yeah, because he I think it was April Fool's, and he disses like it's not him saying like, oh, I don't like all this stuff, because he disses his own work as well.
Yeah, he's just
it's
having
just like
fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's 4 Jason clones out there.
Every single time he appears, it's a new character.
It's a new Jason. It's pretty great, actually. I'm surprised they didn't somehow integrate that into that jokey Lego Star Wars game they just put out. I that would have been prime real estate to throw in some expanded universe characters for like a joke, but they didn't for some reason. I kind of expected that. I mean, they did Darth Jar Jar. I thought that they would like have like Jason and Jana make a cameo with like talking to Kylo Ren, being like, "No, that's us." But I probably hoping for too much.
Guess
I
it's
feel
too,
like
it's
the,
too
the-
obscure probably for
Maybe so.
the average fan.
I feel like the cultural impact of Jason and Jaina has become so downplayed that I think people like forget that they were well known once. Like There's I can't remember what it is. There's some really popular like medical show or something in like America. I don't know what it is, but they have an episode where someone's talking about Star Wars and they go on to explain the whole story of the EU with Jason and Jaina and Anakin. It was quite, people knew about it, and George even famously said, they even did it in the books when talking about his ideas of the story. And now it's become obscure, but I think there was a time when Evan, people were growing up reading Young Jedi Knights, and people knew Jason and Jaina. They were just like a part of Star Wars, and it's weird that we live in a time where it's like people don't even know who they are.
It's where Disney got the idea. They said, "Oh, there's no material for us to work from. Let us just copy everything that's before and change things slightly."
JJ said, "Dark Empire, Clone Emperor, let's do it." Did you guys know that Palpatine coming back in Rise of Skywalker was a decision made like 6 months into development and shooting or whatever? Like they had already filmed like a quarter of the movie whenever JJ decided we're bringing back Palpatine.
Did you guys know that?
That's real. That's
I've
a fact.
heard something like that because in the making of, or one of the making of documentaries I watched, when they called back, I forgot the name of the actor off the top of my head, Ian McDermott. When they called back Ian McDermott, he said it was a shock. Like it came like last minute. Like he didn't even get to see a script. They were like, "Hey, can you do it?" And he was like, "Yeah." And like that's how last minute it was.
Yeah, because the movie was already being filmed.
This just happened with Doctor Who. The guy who ran it lately, Russell T Davies, he did it in 2005 with Christopher Eccleston and all that. But he was so confident that Disney were going to renew for another season that we got, Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, who's quite a big actor. And then it didn't perform well. So Disney were holding off on renewing another season so long that Ncuti left because he couldn't get any other work because he might have to start working on Doctor Who again. And infamously now it ends with the Doctor regenerating into a companion, Rose, who now an old companion is the Doctor. That was filmed I think we know it's something like a few weeks before it aired, and they just asked her last minute to shoot it. And now we don't even know if she is the Doctor because they don't even actually have any clue.
He probably doesn't even know.
Yeah, I don't think they know.
That's crazy. They get her in to film that and not know is there a contract lined up for a show I need to do? What's going on?
What's even crazier is that they shot a total different ending originally, and it must have been so last minute because on Disney Plus in Germany, I think it was, when the episode came out, the picture was of the alternate ending that they shot originally. So we've seen a picture of the alternate ending. It was so last minute that it was on the German streaming for Disney Plus. So that is crazy, and I can't believe how bad production has gotten on so many high quality stuff.
Deadlines.
I'm talking about Doctor Who now, but it links back to what we were talking about with Star Wars.
Deadlines, and I honestly think the internet has been a negative for this because they care so much about fan opinions and fan. The stuff online, they want when they brought back David Tennant, and suddenly everyone online oh, the Doctor's back, and they're all patting themselves on the back, and they're like, how do we do that again? Bring back Rose, she was the companion. That's what's going through their head. Where in 2005 that wasn't a concern. It was more about ratings, what's our number going to read in the newspaper, how many views are we going to have. It wasn't what's this random guy on Twitter going to say.
The difference with reviving it in 2005 compared to now is social media and content, and the guy who ran the show literally said that he writes now for content. So now it was what can get people excited, but back then in 2005 it was how can we get people taking this show seriously again. And I think was to talk about the difference with Star Wars when the prequels were coming out, George wasn't thinking how can I get people excited for Star Wars. He was just thinking, that obviously came into his mind. He wanted people to be excited for it and to enjoy it. But really, he was thinking, I've got a story I want to tell, and I'm going to tell it.
Yeah.
He had written the screenplay for all 3 prequels before he started filming Phantom Menace. Now, he even self-admitted that many changes were being made to the screenplay throughout filming. Attack of the Clones was changed after the reception of Phantom Menace, and then things were changed in Revenge of the Sith. But the core screenplay was always there, and the core character motivations were already in stone. That's why it was a joke where they filmed the ending for Revenge of the Sith while filming for the Tatooine scenes on for Attack of the Clones. They had to refilm it anyway later, but there's footage of them filming the ending of Revenge of the Sith during shooting for Attack of the Clones, saying if we do it right, we won't have to come back. And they just did it on a green screen and didn't go back anyway. But the point is, he knew the story, as opposed to the sequel trilogy, where, tying it back into what you were saying about fan opinions on the internet, it can play out to be the opposite, where it was very clear Rian Johnson was obsessing over fan theories to make sure he delivered something that no one predicted. No one could have seen it coming, and it just made the movie terrible.
He was the anti of what you were saying about Doctor Who. They were writing for content. He was writing against content. He was looking at content and being like, nope, they're wrong. I'm going to do something else.
The picture of him, your Snoke theory sucks. He's like, Snoke's not anybody. He's not anybody. He's not anybody. He's no one. Rey is no one too. Nobody is anything. Your theories suck. You suck. Stop theorizing. Stop. I want you to stop posting my content. Stop liking Star Wars.
I bet he had every theory possible for Snoke, and then he would type it in on Google, and someone had it. It's like, damn it, I can't use it. And that's why in the end, they're like, he's not anybody. I tried them all. I tried to link him to everyone in Star Wars, and someone had already done it.
It's so bad because sometimes the fans get something right. Sometimes the fans get something right, and it's exciting. When fans predict something, like when we're all part of the community and someone has figured it out. We don't know for sure. So when we have that gratified, it is satisfying. It's so exciting to be part of all that discourse. When you throw that away,
the internet would have
you don't care
groaned
anymore.
if Snoke was Jar Jar or Mace Windu. I don't think they would have groaned at either of those. I think they would have been pretty satisfied that they got it right. I think they'd be more confused on how does this line up, because our theory wasn't really very well grounded. Well, either those didn't line up well.
This is why it has to be a middle ground area, because it's. Speaking as a fan who likes theorizing, and the fun is we're trying to get into the head of the writers. We don't want it to be what we said it was because you saw it and said that's cool. We want to guess what you were already going to do. And more importantly, we want to think that you're telling a story and then be like, where's it going next? Because I know he's doing something and I'm having fun being along for the ride. But if I'm suggesting things and you're like, sure, that's cool. Yeah, you're right. That's not fun. You've ruined it. Alternatively, if you're like, the fact that you're trying to figure out pisses me off, I want you to not watch my movie. Stop theorizing. I want to not work. I'm Rian Johnson. I want to not work, because if you watch my movie and you're like guessing my whodunit mystery, fuck you. That makes no sense to me either. But it's only fun if I can like theorize about what it is you already have planned. It's why I like murder mysteries. I'm like trying to figure out who the murderer is. But if I'm thinking that my guessing is going to impact the outcome, I don't want to participate.
I'm enjoying that now with
that's fair.
The new season of Daredevil. I'm not ridiculously online with it, but I engage a little bit and I read stuff, and it is really fun seeing people, guessing some of the stuff that's happening, and because it's in my mind and I think, is that gonna happen? Well, I don't know, and then I see it and I think, oh, that's so cool. People were right about that, and that's great. That's just a sign of good writing, and having that and being comfortable with fans. I think that's something that a lot of creatives aren't, is comfortable with fandom. It can be very negative, but I think you've got to be comfortable with your fans. You've got to accept your fans, and you've got to love them because they're who you're making it for. And if you're not making it for anyone but yourself, at the end of the day, again, who is going to enjoy it but you?
Well said. Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think Game of Thrones is the people who weren't reading the books, because I remember notoriously there was like a back and forth of people who were watching the show for the show's sake would be like, I haven't read the book, shut up, I don't want to know. You know what I'm saying? Because they would enjoy trying to figure out what was going to happen next, because that story is so wild and unpredictable. But I think if a lot of those people thought to themselves, if I say what I think is going to happen, it might change what the writer is going to do, they would not enjoy Game of Thrones the way that they were enjoying it then. I say that because I'm seeing Game of Thrones here on the comments.
Well, that's a perfect example.
I guess you could say
something that's not going to be finished because of online fan. Well, yeah, Walking Dead as well. But I think the Game of Thrones, like the books, will not be finished because J.R.R. Martin, I think, his ending wasn't liked. I think that was his ending.
You think that was legit?
It, obviously. I think that was legit what he told them to do. Like, they rushed way too fast through it, but I think what he was going to do. And then he's like, they didn't like it. Now what do I do now?
he hasn't like condoned it himself, although I do think that was his ending. He said in an interview that the material he gave them could have lasted 13 seasons. And I think, obviously, maybe they didn't want to go that far, but I think to end at 8 seasons when he gave them enough to last them until season 13, I think that's probably why it failed so badly. Like, I feel like the ending we got was what he had, but I bet if he had written that in the books, it would have been like amazing and been so good.
It is funny the fact that links back to Star Wars. I'm pretty sure we've said this on the podcast before, that Star Wars is the reason Game of Thrones got killed, because those showrunners thought they were getting a Star Wars movie.
Oh yeah.
So they rushed that season.
Mm-hmm. And then obviously it was so bad they went, well, we don't want to work with you if you're gonna make bad things.
Ouch. That sucks. I can't even blame them.
Talking about like fandom guessing, that same thing, I still see it now, because I've watched and read The Walking Dead, how like some fans like try and not wanting to guess what's going to happen, but the comics were out there, so like it was hard to avoid what was going to happen when most people already knew. And then like I see a lot of like people critique the show for stuff that was done in the comics when they're just following the source material and saying, oh, how could the writers do this? And look, you've got to be faithful to the source material. Like I feel like you should be adapting most of the time. Yeah, that's like the whole point.
Yeah, it's rough. You brought up Daredevil too, because it's not adapting anything. It's just telling its own story. It's funny that you said people are theorizing about what's going to happen next. 'Cause I actually think that what we've gotten so far in Morning in Season 2 is probably the weakest the show has ever been. We don't have to make it about Daredevil, but that's a case where my theories I was just really disappointed to see what they were doing, because it was very predictable and lackluster. But still, even though I think my theories for what they were going to do were a lot better than what they did, if I had made those theories and thought, okay, well now they're changing it because I theorized that, I would still be disappointed. You gotta stick to your story.
Yeah, you gotta do it. You gotta do the story you set out to do. Like George made tweaks, but he still kept to what he wanted to do and what he wanted to say.
I don't know how to tie this back to Deceived, but at some point...
Kemp probably wasn't allowed to do the story he wanted to do if he had to, follow BioWare's instructions exactly.
From what
or maybe he was the perfect man
I
for the job. Maybe that's maybe the kind of author he is. Like, he just works really well if, like, hey, here's what you need to do, and he'll just fill in the blanks.
Yeah, from what I know, Del Rey was... it seems that they got a bit stricter more and more as time went on. And we know that under Disney, it's probably... Still, they do give a lot of authors freedom. But
no Mara Jade.
They don't have... Yeah, they don't have as much freedom as they did before Disney. And then late Del Rey, before Disney, didn't have as much freedom as early Del Rey. They didn't have as much freedom as Bantam. Eventually, you have to crack down a little bit. But, it's like why Michael A. Stackpole left. He enjoyed working on the New Jedi Order story, but... the way Del Rey gave so many notes and changes, he said, I'm done, and he didn't want to work on it ever again. He was going to write a trilogy and then just wrote 2 books and left because he didn't want to work under that ever again because of how many notes that they got back. And you must think, that was the late 90s and early 2000s, how much worse that must be now to write under.
It must be insufferable.
So I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Kemp...
I bet it's on a per author basis though, because it seems like
it is.
Like the new Thrawn novels, I think he's just given free reign, right? Like I don't think like Timothy Zahn is held under that much scrutiny. Yeah, I guess there's some stuff he's not allowed.
He has asked over and over the years
not just
to
him.
write something with Mara.
Wasn't it you, Gabriel, that linked that article where it's like multiple authors have begged for Mara and Disney will not sign off?
And
do you think it's because
Claudia
Filoni has
Gray,
something planned for her?
No.
Like, is that like no?
I think his plan for her is to keep her gone. And I have
another one. Another one is that Claudia
theory.
Gray just said recently that she really wants to write a novel about Knights of the Old Republic characters. And she said she would write about anyone. She'd write anything related to it, but she desperately wants to write something KOTOR related. They'll probably never ever let that happen. But you were right in that some authors... You're right in July that some authors got a lot more freedom than others. Famously, Troy Denning had a great relationship with the editors. Like, they just loved him. He was, from what I know, he's a lovely guy, so that might be part of it. But he worked so well with them. He had such a good relationship with them. That's why he got so much freedom.
I was about to say,
not everyone likes what he
you'd
did
have
with
to be
freedom.
really-
I enjoy some of it.
You'd have to be really likable to pitch Star Wars, but big bugs, and get away with it.
Yeah. He got, honestly, that is the case, right? He said that he had like no notes. He could do anything he wanted with that. All he had to remove was a sex scene.
Well,
the only thing he had to remove was a sex scene, but
I agree with that.
Everything else he got to keep.
Well,
and I
definitely
from what I
had,
know about said scene, I wouldn't want to have seen it.
Kemp definitely had some freedom, or at least maybe they weren't checking in too much, because I noticed there was an E11 blaster that he mentioned, and like that's not invented until like the Imperial Age, like way in the future. So I looked it up actually on Wikipedia. They mentioned it was invented in the Imperial Age. They have a whole, I say a whole page. There's a page separately for the E11 blaster brackets deceived, and it just mentions that it's in the book, and that's it. That's all they have on that. So there's a few things like that where like have fallen in by accident or not been taken out by the editors.
In the world between worlds, Ahsoka threw an E11 blaster, and it went through a portal that landed in
into the
Deceived,
Old
and that's where they got it
Yeah,
from.
and then Zero had picked it up, and that's why he has an E11.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one else has it, but he
And
has
she
just
actually
the
she
E11.
stopped and said, "Zerid, this is an E11 blaster."
Yeah,
That is
you
unironically.
must refer to it. Yeah, in the book, refer to it as your E11 blaster.
That is unironically not like unplausible, given how much like time loop stuff they got in it. Like, we just talked about how the Jaden Core books feature a Sith from the Old Republic who time skips. So, World Between Worlds or whatever.
Yeah.
Ahsoka is actually
As a big time travel fan, I'm glad it's not a big part of Star Wars. I don't really think it fits as well.
I'm the opposite. I hate time travel. I can't stand when any story except like Back to the Future uses time travel in any capacity, in any regard. Dragon Ball Z and Back to the Future, and I only say that because Dragon Ball Z is not serious enough for it to matter. I cannot stand when time travel is employed as a plot device. It just opens up too many get away with it cards, literarily speaking. It makes it to where you can undo consequences, and when you get to that point, I'm not really invested anymore.
There's a sort of interesting thing with in Legacy of the Force. Jason basically learns to time travel with the Force, but the idea is that you can't change anything. Like, you can see it, and you can see stuff that's happened, and you can like be there,
It's
but you
the
can't
Harry
change a
Potter
thing. It's impossible.
pensive, right? When they put their face in the water, it's like that. He can like see.
It's kind of like that. Yeah. Like, this
Yeah.
suggests
I think that's
that
a
you
good
can
way of
try
doing it.
change things, but nothing will ever actually change, like, at all.
I think
That's fine.
that works as a plot device because it's the equivalent of like they found security footage. You know, it kind of fits that role. Like I'm
That's cool.
totally fine with that, but it's cool because it's a cool force power. I mean, like this book has a lot of cool force powers. Like the power scaling is crazy. Like at one point, Aaron does like a 50 meter backflip. I'm not sure if I think Kemp is American. I'm not sure if he knows on the conversion, but that's like ridiculous. that is like it's like 300 feet or something. Like it's so far to do a backflip. She's just flying like across the entire Jedi temple.
You could try and recontextualize it in the way that, like, when you read the Darth Bane novels, it's said that like the lightsaber combat is so fast that it's like the human eye like can't see it properly.
Says that in this, like Zered can't see what Malgus and Aaron are doing. They're just zooming all over this rubble like so fast.
It's like Dragon Ball Z power scaling.
Yeah, it's like that. They are just fighting like crazy, and there's a lot of like force augmented MMA moves. Like Malgus tries to kick her, and she grabs his leg and like flips him and throws him across the room.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of stuff that you just don't see in the visual medium.
I was surprised
the end fight scene was
how
fire.
well she fought against him.
Yeah,
I
didn't expect someone could do that well against Malgus.
The only reason I figured that was going to happen.
But she only could because she used the dark side.
Well,
like
yeah,
it kind of shows that Malgus actually is a bit of a bitch because this Jedi used the dark side once and overpowered him.
I like your explanation better because I felt like Kemp was just I feel like he was too soft on her because he liked her as a character. I think she was having some Corran Horn syndrome, if that makes sense. I can sometimes certain authors will clearly prefer one character over other characters. And that can work to your advantage if the author is aware of it and they use it to make that character like suffer, like Spider-Man, for instance. But a lot of times what ends up happening is the author subconsciously just makes them like really likable and cool and badass, and they tap into the dark side once and now they're kicking the Dark Lord of the Sith's ass because they're so cool with their 300,000 feet backflip. It's very over the top, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What you said is it's good sometimes. For example, Aaron Alston has the characters that he likes, like the characters from X-Wing, but he writes it in a way that like you're pleased to see them and you're really happy. Like when you think, oh, this is an Aaron Alston book, I can't wait to read about Wedge. Like that's the way that you feel. And then there's some authors. Again, I say this a lot. The part of the EU community I'm a part of is so critical towards Troy Denning. I really like him, despite issues I have with him. Eventually, he becomes obsessed with a character called Alima, and every time she shows up, I'm like, oh my god, stop writing about this woman. Nobody is interested in her. And I love when he's writing other people, but there are some authors, where they just put their Karen Travis, Boba Fett. This is a story about Jedi versus Sith and family, like all this interpersonal Jedi Sith stuff. And why am I reading about Boba Fett? You're killing an amazing, you're killing off a main character and it's really emotional. And wait, the next chapter is about Boba Fett and we're just ignoring the big thing that happened. There's a way to go about it, Like I said, sometimes you read an author, like I said, Aaron Alston, he puts Wedge in everything, but you're really happy to see Wedge and you really love to see the way that he writes Wedge. And then there's some authors, like you're saying with this book, it's pretty clear that Kemp, has a love for this character that he's created that bleeds out a little bit too much sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Authors need to be really self-aware of when that's happening. And you have other examples of this. I've brought up Dragon Ball Z several times, but again, Toriyama's love of Goku makes him a significantly less likable character than Vegeta, who Toriyama stated on multiple occasions he didn't really like. And that's why Vegeta was always going through hell, which makes him more relatable. Attack on Titan. I forget the Shinji Mikami? I forget the author's name for Attack on Titan. Stated multiple times Mikasa was his favorite character. He said Eren, he liked Eren, but Eren, and that's why everybody related to Eren, because he was struggling. You have to be so careful as an author because your favorite character, they always make them flawless. And if your character is flawless, we just don't like them that much.
There are some authors that can do. I'll give an example of an author that used to be really good at this and might have fallen prey to it. Timothy Zahn. Originally, I think in writing characters like Mara and Thrawn, he made them so complex and interesting. And Mara becomes one of the strongest, most capable characters.
Shinji Mikami's Resident Evil.
But she starts off so problematic and complicated and flawed, and she takes a long time to get to somewhere where she's good. Thrawn starts off a definite villain. Now, I enjoyed the first canon Thrawn novel, but Thrawn under Timothy Zahn now is like, he's almost like a hero. Like he is really like this flawless guy that shows up and beats everyone and is really clever all the time. And honestly, you have fun reading it, but he's nowhere near as interesting as he was when he was a definite villain, when he was not Timothy Zahn's favourite character to write about. And yeah, I love Timothy Zahn, and I enjoy modern Thrawn in his novels because he still writes him really clever, interesting. He does really complicated and interesting stories. The original 2017 Thrawn novel is one of my favourite Star Wars novels, but I have to admit that I think Timothy Zahn has become a little bit too favourable to Thrawn. I think sometimes you need to do what Stackpole did with Corran. After giving him absolutely everything for so long, he just fucking gave him absolute shit in the New Jedi Order. Sometimes you need to give your favourite characters absolute shit to make them interesting. Sometimes you have to torture them to actually make them interesting. You have to be willing to hurt the characters that you love, because that is where, as Evan said, that's where it's relatable, that's where it's interesting.
And I will say, to the credit of Kemp with the Eren character, I was a little bit compelled with her, because she did have like an immaturity to her that was relatable, where she was like refusing to acknowledge
I really
Jedi
liked
wisdom.
Her arc. Because I was convinced she was going to go to the dark side or get killed, like throughout the book. So for her to actually go back around and be like, oh no, actually I need to fall back into my Jedi teachings at the end, that was like the way to go. I think that was actually really well done because it did feel like really set up to be like she's gonna either turn to the dark side or get killed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the arc that leads there, but that final battle I think should have been way harder for her because it didn't make me feel like she was so badass. It's like you said, it just made me feel like Malgus was kind of weak. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Something you could have done is you could have actually had Malgus's love for the woman that he's in love with be the reason he's losing, and his
Yeah, that should have been a weakness. That shouldn't have
Yeah,
been a
that
strength.
was actually his
Yeah.
strength. That was
And
why he
then
won in
her-
the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and then her anger over losing her master being more like the Sith strength that makes her win that battle. That's the way I think you should have handled that, because
Yeah.
That would have been way more
Malgus
interesting.
is when he's full of hate, he's really powerful. But it's the fact that he's got this love. You know, it is like this weakness for him. It shouldn't have been his strength, and that should have been.
But
the
I
reason
thought
he
that was
lost
what
it.
was interesting about it was that it was his strength, but he was blind to see it. Because like when he thought that Lyanna was dead and that Aaron had killed her, that was when at the start of the fight Aaron was winning because he was full of like this hate and this fear that his love had been killed. And it was only when he realized when Aaron said like, "Oh no, I didn't kill her," and he knew that Aaron was telling the truth, that then he became more powerful. I thought it was just an interesting juxtaposition how he just didn't actually realize that it was the love that was making him stronger, and then he stupidly killed her.
That part I'm
It's like,
okay
bro,
with.
there's a section in the book where like it describes her kissing his ruined lips, and I shuddered, and I'm just like, bro, you're never gonna find anyone better than this. Like, you should really be happy with what's
Treating her
going on.
better, come on.
Yeah, you specifically,
Yeah.
Malgus.
Yeah, like she's happy to kiss like whatever that the description of the lips was really disgusting, and I guess it's meant to be because yeah,
He's disgusting.
yeah.
He's not out
She
here
really
looks
loves
maxing.
him.
He's hate maxing.
No, she really loves him, but like also like in a
Stockholm
I guess it's a
syndrome
weird
kind of way.
relationship, Stockholm syndrome, where
Early on in the book, where she like calls him his name, Veridin,
and he beats her, yeah.
yeah,
for
he's
saying
like
it in public,
and
yeah.
she like flinches. He doesn't hit her unless that happens later. The scene I was referring to.
No, it's
he, like-
described that Aaron like used the Force to go into her mind, and like their relationship has been like messed up for years. Like there's been a lot of like abuse going on.
Yeah, you.
That's
have,
why she's like that's why she doesn't kill Lyanna, because she's like, oh, Lyanna's already dead. Like this woman doesn't exist. That's like what she sees as like sees in her.
brutal. You got
Yeah.
Mark Thompson's iconic Lyanna impression, where he's like Veridin. That's how he did it. I don't know if you listened to the audio, but that's how he
no,
was.
I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
I read the. I mean, she's a Twi'lek, so I always envisioned her sounding like the Twi'leks from KOTOR. But they've got like that kind of soft.
What was
kind of
that
voice to
iconic
them.
line? Mushu Shakabaka or something like that. You know, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Classic.
maybe that's why she likes Malgus as well, because it's like genetically the women are pretty in Twi'leks and the men are just super ugly.
Oh,
Like,
that
that's
could
just
be
the
it,
actual
yeah.
genetic thing, yeah. So maybe she's just like, yeah, this is as handsome as gets in the Twi'lek race as well. So there's nothing wrong with this.
What was the name
It's their
of
culture.
the Twi'lek who worked for Jabba? It's on the tip of my tongue. Can't remember it.
Oh, the one who became on
Yeah.
Jabba's throne in
Yeah,
Boba
yeah.
Fett.
I have an
remember.
idea, but I'm gonna double check it.
Yeah, somebody confirm that for me, because the second you said ugly Twi'lek male, that's who I thought of.
Yeah. That's classic
Bib
Star Wars as
Fortuna?
well.
Bib
where,
Fortuna.
like Bib Fortuna, yeah. Where there's
Yeah.
one
Star Wars story.
like person of that race, and then they decide, oh, all the people from the race must look like that.
Yeah.
So we've seen the women, and
Also-
we've seen one man, so all the men are ugly because
And
this
all
one guy
the
was
men have
ugly.
the one fat tentacle.
yeah.
All Corellians are scoundrel criminals that don't like odds.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, that's actually been one of my biggest criticisms of most sci-fi, because I've been like writing like a sci-fi book for a while and like putting together a universe, and I was like, I don't want to do any aliens because they inevitably just end up being factions. It doesn't really make sense. I could just have human factions that would be the exact same as if I had like Mass Effect. So you have the Turians. All of them act the exact same because the Turians have a culture, and that doesn't really make sense because humanity doesn't have a culture. We have a bunch of different cultures. You know, and you've got the
There's
Twi'leks
the
have a
belief that I
culture.
guess if you jump further enough in the future where everyone's a space race, there would be a monoculture. But if we've seen anything with the internet, I think there's just less monoculture now than ever.
Yeah,
So
and
I
also
think, yeah, that's
It's
probably
just
what
like a
happened.
million mini.
and
Yeah,
all of
exactly.
the planets we see in Star Wars are like multicultural anyway, so they wouldn't be
Yeah,
representing
exactly.
their monoculture.
No.
I assume.
Well, if anything, they represent the planet. Like Coruscant probably has a culture between like I don't know the three classes of Coruscant, and like you said, like the aliens on that planet don't seem to matter. Like you're either a poor Coruscantian or a rich Coruscantian, and that's your culture.
I imagine maybe there would be, to a degree, certain species. Like, I think Trandoshans would probably maintain their culture regardless.
Yeah.
Or, like, Dugs. But I think, like,
well, in Disney Star Wars, though, we're seeing a lot less like language differences.
True.
It does seem now everyone's starting to speak basic, where like you could go back into KOTOR and you had to listen to the same 10 voice lines because everyone spoke a different language.
yeah, I actually think we should have more alien languages. Do you guys ever see the fan recuts of the prequel trilogy where they make almost all of the aliens speak a different language? Like, the Phantom Menace, the Nemoidians all speak an alien language and it's subtitled.
Does
and
Jar
I'm
Jar
like,
speak a different language?
no,
That'd be really funny.
He
No.
was.
I mean, Jar Jar speaks broken English already, so it obviously makes sense.
He was mostly cut out of the fan edit I'm talking about anyway. He's barely in it.
Fair
but
enough.
I remember I watched it because I'm a Phantom Menace apologist. It's one of my favorite movies. But seeing the Nemoidians speaking alien and seeing the subtitles, I'm like, this is better actually. Instead of the borderline
The
offensive
accents they went for.
Now there are two of them.
Yeah. There were certainly a lot of allusions made that weren't very on.
I don't think Lucas did it on purpose, though. To be fair, I don't think so. Anyway.
No, I think he was just trying to show like, hey, foreign. I think that was as far as it went,
Yeah.
they could have been Middle Eastern, they could have been African, they could have been anything. They just had to be foreign.
Just
that was, I
non-Western.
think, the brief. Yeah.
Classic Lucas, man. But yeah, I actually would like to see more aliens speaking alien languages, unless everyone ever speaks Galactic Basic.
Yeah. Well, that's the one critique I had of the Mole show based on episode 1. Why does the Spybot speak English now or speak Basic? Because like his Spybots and Phantom Menace didn't speak Basic. I think it'd be really funny if they did now. Like if when they went back to Maul to say like, oh, the Jedi are coming, if it just went like, Jedi come in.
You know, that's a good question.
Like,
I don't know why that
completely
would be.
change that scene, you know?
Yeah, because 3PO like translates for R2, and the fact that you would have droids that translate for other droids was like a thing in the OT. So I don't know. That's a good point.
Like the Spybot just sounded like kind of like the ones from what in my memory anyway, kind of like the ones from Empire Strikes Back. You know, the probe droids.
Yeah,
So
yeah, he does.
Now that it suddenly is speaking Basic. I mean, obviously because it's the comic relief character, it is the 3PO of the gang. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a scene in episode 4 where the Spybot sees something impending, and it goes "uh-oh," like a B1 battle droid.
But like R2 proved, you don't actually need words to say that. You could do that in beeps. You could beep uh-oh.
He did beep uh-oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Even
so...
I hate to say it, but even BB-8 from the sequel trilogy didn't speak English, and but you could recognize the emotion that thing was trying to put across. So it's. That's
my only critique is that now everything speaks Basic. Yeah.
Everything ever is speaking Basic.
Everything.
I'm actually trying to.
They don't want people to read subtitles because they probably worry about my generation not having the attention span to read rather than just watch. Especially when they just look at phones.
Yeah, we're illiterate.
In Star Wars, though, it always had baked-in subtitles. It would just say like alien language, like a lot of the time, like it would be baked in. Like you couldn't turn it off, So like you'd just be like, oh, alien language, I guess. Like you're not meant to know what they're saying.
You don't even need subtitles, like you're saying, because Chewbacca never had subtitles at all. He just roared, and Han understood him somehow.
Yeah, all you need is a character to translate, because that's what Han was doing half the time. Was like the dialogue was written in such a way that you kind of got the gist of what they were talking about anyway.
And that is hard to do without it being clumsy, because most of the time the character reiterates what they said and then responds to it. But I feel like Han a lot of times didn't do that. He just responded to it, which is good. It's like, oh, so you're saying
you could figure out what he was responding to.
Yeah, but modern media production does not assume that its viewer is very intelligent.
Well, that's the whole. Netflix streaming thing,
is written.
They're reiterating plot every 10 to 15 minutes.
They need exposition has to be like every 10 minutes or something like that.
That's why I couldn't finish the last season of Stranger Things, because it was like they were having to talk about everything that they were doing and why. I mean, well, that was the main thing that pissed me off, but I was already losing attention to that last season anyway. But I was like, I kept saying it. So my parents were watching it as well, and we started it together. And I remember saying, they're explaining something again. Oh, they're explaining it again. Oh, they're going to
Yeah.
explain that again. And I just couldn't do it.
I've been watching Wednesday with my wife, and it's the same thing where like this character, like, oh, I saw this character's gonna die. Hey, Thing, I saw this character's gonna die. Hey, Mum, I saw this character's gonna die. It's just that like for the entire episode, I saw this character's gonna die. And like, yeah, we get it. We saw it.
I saw a video. I'm not a big fan of the Peaky Blinders show, but they just put out that movie, The Immortal Man, I think it's called. And I saw a video that showed the quote. I think it was Matt Damon saying that you had to do that, and then like multiple scenes in that Peaky Blinders movie where the characters are just like reiterating the plot again. They're like, we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this, and then another scene where they're just saying it again, just reminding the audience like, hey, here's the plot, by the way. Like you only have like an hour and a half. Should you really be spending any time retelling me the plot again?
Apparently, because they know most people don't actually watch the shows. They just have it on their phone, like as they're walking to the station or on the train or whatever. Background noise.
I feel like if you write something good enough, my generation especially, we will turn the phone off if you are getting me interested. If you're not interested in me, I'll look at my phone. But The Sopranos is my favorite show ever, and I blasted through that, and I was captured by it, and I would just look at that and not anything else, and I would watch episode after episode after episode because of how well it was written. And then I watch a lot of stuff that comes out now, and grab my phone because it's just don't really care about it because it's not capturing me the whole time, which I feel like it should be doing. But then you shouldn't be trying to write for people doing that. You should be trying to make something that will capture their attention.
Yeah. But is this hypocritical of me to say, because I prefer to watch shows like this? Like I wasn't watching more because I prefer to binge at the end. But I think when shows had to guarantee people would come back the next week, I think they would push the right better. When you had to have people remember your time slots like a week in the future, you had to be good, because otherwise your ratings will drop off at the first episode. Whereas now you could take 3-4 episodes to get things ramping up because like, oh, they're gonna binge watch it. Yeah. Like we can take our time with this.
You say that, but I'm thinking about the two new seasons of Daredevil, which, although I like them, are objectively inferior to the Netflix seasons, which you could just binge.
Yeah.
And
I guess almost... it depends on the approach, right? Because some of them approach it almost like this is a movie segmented, and I think those work more to be binged. Whereas if you're trying to do more of a traditional show, then you need it to be stronger, to keep people coming back. But of course, that also got boiled down into just plot twists every episode and cliffhangers and everything. So they obviously found a way to industrialize that.
Some shows released weekly work better binged. Like my second favorite show is Lost. But I think
really
a part of
all of it.
Yeah, I think all of it, and I love the ending as well. I think it's perfect.
That's a good hot take to have.
Yeah. But because people don't understand it, but I could go on about that. But I think
low
part
IQ,
of why
low IQ Lost watchers.
I don't. My IQ is too low to understand Rick and Morty or the ending of Lost.
But I think part of the reason why, especially if you watch it when it's coming out, it's so complex that when you watch it binge like I did, I remember it all and it's easy. But when it's going on for years, when something important from like the first season shows up in the last season, how on earth are you supposed to remember that? Like that, my second favorite show, that is a criticism if you're going to watch it weekly as it comes out over the years. You can't really expect the audience to remember stuff like that. But I watched it all in one go. Obviously not in like one sitting, but across
possible. But
watched it whenever I wanted. Yeah. And none of that was an issue for me. But the ending, it is something that I think it's fair to not like it if you don't understand it. But people always say,
I probably don't understand it. Look, dude, I like Batman v
Lost
Superman.
Was the original Game of Thrones, right?
I'm not going to give you a hard time.
It was like people had high expectations for the ending, and then it completely dropped off from what people expected. I guess maybe because the quality wasn't so drastic.
What people thought happened didn't happen is the main problem, but I think the show made a fatal error in. They made the ending clear, but then the credits almost accidentally validated the wrong impression. I mean, obviously this will be spoilers basically, but people thought that it was that they had been dead the whole time, which wasn't what the ending was. But it doesn't help that at the end and the credits, they show the plane crash in the island with nobody there, which almost validates the idea that everyone was dead the whole time. But they have a scene in the episode where a character asks, were we all dead? And they said, well, some of you died earlier on, some of you died long after. What the answer was that all the stuff that happened on the island in the show was real and happened. And the reason why all the characters are together in that moment is that they've all died at different points. And the idea is that this afterlife that we see them in, there is no time, because after death, there is no such thing as time. So they all meet each other at the same time in the afterlife, but they all died at different points in their lives. So some of them could have died of old age, some of them died in the show, as you saw, but they all come together in death, like their souls reunite in that like final episode. But all the stuff you see on the island was real and happened. Like that's real.
But they were all dead while it was happening?
No, that was all. They were all alive for that.
So when do they all die?
At different points. So some characters die in the show.
So what does that have to do with them being on the island?
Nothing. What happens is in the final season, there's a B plot where it seems like the plane crash never happened, and they all meet together in like the final episode and remember what happened in the show. And it turns out that this B plot you were watching wasn't real, and all the island stuff was real. And that other story you were watching was a sort of afterlife, a purgatory almost, where they had to let go of what happened to them in their lives.
Is that when they escape
moving
the
on to
island
afterlife.
and they're trying to get back to the island? Is that the purgatory?
Are
you saying that? Hang on. Are you saying that?
Sorry.
This is
Sounds
about
like
Lost
Heaven
now.
brought them together to do the audio commentary of the show. Like, we're gonna get you all together now and explain what happened.
Are you saying that they
off the island?
Are you saying that they get to the last season, introduce a subplot that has to do with like purgatory, only to be like, but that's fake, that doesn't matter, it's all real? Is that what I'm understanding, or am I just stupid?
Right, I'll try to explain it.
Explain it to me like I'm low IQ.
The subplot in the final series is a mystery, and then in the final episode, it turns out that whole subplot was the background for the finale, because it's like a purgatory after they've all died that you're watching, but the island stuff was real. That is the real life that they experienced. There's this separate story. That's the not real. Well, it's real, but that's not while they're alive.
So the
that's
writers
like
came together afterwards and thought it would be a good idea to introduce an epilogue purgatory subplot to a story where everything was already mysterious and confusing, but be like, but all of that's real, but this has nothing to do with it. But also, like, do you see how that might seem like a bad idea?
Maybe you can blame the network for forcing them to do an extra season that they maybe didn't need.
They wanted it to be 3 seasons, and the network forced them. They said, "Oh, you're going to give us 10."
I said this sounds like they were like, "How do we fill all this extra time?"
Just don't introduce a purgatory subplot and just say if it's all real, it's all real.
But the idea, I don't know why people never thought the island stuff wasn't real, because they have a scene in the finale where they're worried that people would think that, so they have a character say,
because the entire season makes it seem like it's like heaven and hell and they were all dead. I haven't seen it in like over a decade, but I remember watching throughout that season being like, so it's all fake?
Well, that's not it at all, no.
I'm stupid, guys. I'm sorry.
To defend you, Evan, if enough people think it was all fake, then obviously there was a problem somewhere.
Yeah, that just puts me in the average IQ bell curve.
I never experienced that. I don't think I'm doing it justice as well, explaining it the way that I am.
Maybe it is like you said. If you watch it closer together, it's better like that. Like, I think Breaking Bad actually is way better. Breaking Bad's like one of the best shows ever made. But if you watch it back to back, really like close together, it's even better because you do notice like how well tied together it is. So maybe it is one of those things like Lost is really well tied together, but you only notice that if you binge it.
That's true. I've never binged Lost.
I dropped off Lost. I dropped off Lost after like season 3 or something. So I only watched it as it came out, and then I dropped off.
Yeah, honestly, like I said, I don't think I'm doing a very good job explaining it. It's I won't even bother trying to try to explain that because it is a very complex show. But when I watched it as I did, it all came to me very naturally. I thought as an emotional finale, I thought it was perfect.
I'm kind of with Julia, where it's like I watched like the first 5 seasons when it was like airing and stuff, and then I just caught the rest of the season a little bit later, and I was just confused. So you're probably right, and I also agree. Breaking Bad is even better if you binge it, if you watch all of it back to back. So if I went and rewatched the entirety of Lost, I'd probably get what you were saying. And I mean, like I was saying earlier, like I like Batman v Superman, and I've run apologetics for that fucking movie for so long. Like I understand where you're coming from. It's like I'm not doing a very good job of explaining what it was trying to do, but I promise that you have the wrong idea.
I know
about
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could probably make like a good like a video talking about it.
Probably should
if I put my time into it. Yeah.
That'd be an interesting
find
video.
If maybe someone's already done it. But
not Star Wars related,
can't
but
be-
it is writing related.
Some things can't be explained.
Yeah.
Like, as we were saying earlier, like, why did this book not appeal to us to pick it up? Like, we all read it, we're like, I like it. It was a good book. Really, really struggled to finish it, though. Like, some of those things they can't explain.
I need to coin a term for...
audiobook. Did you have when the days flipped? Like, what did it say? Like something like day 2?
No.
So there's a page 65% of the way through the book that says day 2, which implies that the first 65% of the book is a single day.
That's crazy.
I was so confused when I saw it. So, like, the invasion of the Coruscant, I've got it all written down. The invasion of Coruscant, escape of Aaron Lanier from Onderon, Zerod's return to Volta, Aaron finding him and like the entire arc with his daughter, and then Vrath, the other mercenary, finding his daughter. They fight Vrath and they escape from Volta. They go to that place in space to find the Imperial cruisers, and then he magnetically latches into the Imperial cruiser. And then he's like, "Oh, this is an ancient technique that the smugglers all keep to themselves," and is what Han does in Empire Strikes Back. They link onto that ship. They hyperspace to Coruscant. They escape from the Imperial cruisers. They fly into the atmosphere. Their ship blows up. And then Aaron uses the Force, so they fall 10 miles through the sky, and then she stops them from dying. That's when they fall asleep when they land and they're like badly injured. That was a day apparently, because after that it's just day 2.
That's so weird when you read when you read Heir to the Empire and Luke is like, okay, I'm on Coruscant, I'm gonna go to Dagobah. All right, I'll be in my cockpit for a few days now.
Yeah.
Like, that's like how long travel takes. Like, he prepares himself. Okay, I'm gonna meditate for a few days. Yeah, I've brought some stuff
my annotation
to last me
is
over
like,
for a few days.
1, I'm pretty sure hyperspace would have taken way too long, and 2, how do they fit all of that into a day? And then, the next one is day 3. But like day 2, the actual existence of day 2 was just they go into the works and find the security footage of how like Master Zalo died, and then she fights Malgus, and then that's it. Like that makes more sense for a day.
Or maybe
and then it suddenly says day 3, and then it's the ending segment.
I'm always complaining about like not having enough time to get anything done in a single day, but clearly I'm just not. I'm not locked in like like Aaron is.
Maybe it's one of those things where because they're traveling between planets, the time zones are changing, and so it's just extending this day. Like there's people who travel. If you fly around the world fast enough, you can have your birthday twice. They're just doing that. Yeah. Like this is it's like 400-hour day.
Maybe there was like a few daylight saving hours as well in there.
Yeah.
Legitimately a 92-hour day.
Planets.
Yeah.
They finally see.
That's the only way it makes sense.
Man, that I completely missed that. I didn't even realize
it might have not been in the audio book. It's just like
I don't think it was in the audio book. No.
It's a page on its own with like in the Old Republic font. It says day 2, and I was like, "What the fuck? That was one day."
Bro, hang on. Yeah. I'm gonna get my physical book. Give me like 2 seconds.
Yeah. I've got the page on my annotations on my Kindle now. I'm gonna annotation for you. It's actually on the page. It was absolutely ridiculous. I just so dumbfounded that was in it.
I mean, I can only imagine as well, like you're reading it right, and you get to that point and you see day 1, you think, "What? A day?"
Yeah. That's what I was like. That was a day. That's why I wrote it all down. I like recounted the plot in my head because I was like, "There's no way that was all a day."
Yeah. That is nuts.
It's really cool though that Aaron is able to use.
There's a High Republic tease at the end of this.
Page 225 in the Kindle book.
225.
Yeah, 225.
Page
looks
number
like
will
that.
be different
It
on
just
the
says
Essential Legends edition
Day
because the
2.
font and shit.
Yeah.
What chapter comes after day 2, or is that split by chapters?
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10. Okay, this is 12. So
Completely dumbfounded me. But yeah, it's really cool that Aaron is able to use the Force to slow them through the atmosphere as they're falling, because their ship gets blown up basically in like subspace, and they start falling down in the Coruscant. And she wraps herself around Zered and uses the Force to slow them down like a parachute.
I feel like
there's a lot of
I've
overpowered
seen-
Force stuff going on in this.
There is.
I feel like I've seen that in a different piece of Star Wars media, but Starkiller does that at the end of Force Unleashed. That's what it is. He jumps into the Death Star from space and he uses the Force to catch his descent. It's right here.
Yeah,
Day-
because I have to
day
say
two.
day
Tiny
2.
on the.
Day
Yeah.
2.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
that
tiny
one,
on. There's a whole page on Kindle.
That is like the smallest thing.
It's just, in the book you wouldn't even notice it. On the Kindle thing, page. So I was like, what the hell? That was a whole day.
It's a 13 chapter book and 10 chapters all happen in one day.
Yeah,
That's
that's
crazy,
ridiculous.
That is crazy. Also,
And
it's
that
cool.
shows
There's
as
a
well
character
how
named
stupid the
Shizor
long
in here
chapters
as
are.
well, which is shout out to Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, I kept
I thought
thinking that when I heard it.
it
in
was
the
really
audiobook.
funny to me when the book opened up with Fat Man, because that's the name of one of the
I
ships.
know.
So it's just in italics. Fat Man.
I spent a few minutes listening to the audiobook. I replayed it and I was thinking, is that right? And I was thinking, is the character called Fat Man? Like, is
Yeah,
that
I
his
thought
name?
I thought it was one of the characters' names as well. But because
Did we
it's
ever learn-
described as a her, but it's because it's his ship, and that's why he's referencing it as a her.
But he said
Iconic ship
He
name.
said something.
Yeah.
He said something about it, like it being like disrespectful to like have said fat woman or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
remember if they ever really explained why. Like I thought, like
I
the
guess
first thing
because
I
you
thought
can't,
was, like,
you shouldn't talk about a woman's weight. I think was just what he was going for there.
yeah, that's probably it.
That's what I talked
For some
about.
reason,
We were saying before the show. Like, there's some humor in this book, but it kind of falls flat. One that I did like though was during when they fly into Coruscant for the first time, and there's this Imperial blockade, and they use the tractor beam to grab the ship. When Malgus is coordinating all that, he has one of the other Sith on the other line, like in an earpiece. So when he's like, pull them in, and the other guy's like, "Are you talking to me?" Like, I thought that was funny.
I thought I was a bit weirded. Like I was confused when Kemp specified Malgus using a wireless
Yeah, a wireless, like a
earphone at some
Bluetooth.
point.
Yeah.
I was
But I
like,
think it's
what?
literally just for that joke, because it's the only way that
Yeah.
joke works. Yeah. It also has when he goes to a hospital on Coruscant, and the hospital's dealing with like all the death and destruction from the Imperial invasion, and he's looking for Liana, who's in there. And he's shocked to find that they are using like tubes and cables up to medical equipment because they have to pull out all the old reserves from the past. And he's like, they're using cables, and then it's like pause as a separate line, cables. Like he's completely shocked, like, oh my god, this is some like retro stuff. Obviously, the implication being like that's our current healthcare.
Yeah, that's pretty good humor. I mean, there's not much in
Yeah.
this book, especially compared to
There's
some of the
not
other
much.
stuff.
He does emphasize words a lot like that when he wants it to be a bit more comedic or just to have emphasis. So like when Fraff finds Ara in the park and he's like, oh, that could be Zira's daughter, and then he like goes, a daughter, and it reminded me of like Vader, you know, when he assists her. It was like
Oh,
Vraff
yeah.
having that. Vraff has the same kind of realization, being like, oh, that's his daughter. Like I can use that as leverage. And then when he does try to use it as leverage, he gets killed. And for some reason, Zira feels bad about it.
Yeah, you know, this is
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense. We covered that. It's not a
Yeah.
bad book, and it's like you said earlier. It's like it's hard to quantify. It's fun. I just think it's the stakes aren't really there. I think that, I'm a huge advocate for starting your book off with something exciting, some kind of exceptional cold open or something really big and impactful. But I think if you started off with something that big, the rest of the book is going to have a really hard time following up on
Yeah.
that. Because
It was always going to have a hard time because Malgus, he can't get harmed because he's in the game. He's the poster child of the game. So I knew when Aaron's going to get revenge on Malgus, like, well, obviously he's going to win. That's why I was actually shocked that Aaron didn't die. Because I thought that was inevitable. Like, she's going to die or turn to the dark side. She has to. And I think having that in the back of your mind just makes it feel like, well, the whole plot of this book of like, I'm going to go get revenge against this guy, you know it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not the same as like in the Bane books. as much as you know, like the sort of legacy that Bane has, it gets to a certain point when you don't really know what's going to happen to him, and you really you do think anything could happen to him at this point, especially in that last book.
And
It's with Malgus, you don't know.
It's
When you do
interesting.
know.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring up Bane too, because I think that a huge part about what's missing from this revenge book, because that's what this is. This is a revenge book, really.
Yeah.
We don't spend any time with Erin and her master. So we don't, as the reader, we don't care. We don't care about that dynamic. We don't care about that relationship. We needed an entire first act of her and her master being really relatable, really interesting, so that we felt like we wanted her to get revenge. Just like, it's not like John Wick, because you watch John Wick, they kill his dog, and immediately every human with a soul is like, obviously, we want to see revenge for that because you killed a dog. That's hard. But we don't know this guy. But if you look at Bane, Carpetian spent several chapters building up Bane's getting bullied by the rest of his crew, getting torn down by his dad, getting really mistreated, to the point where he finally does snap. We as the reader are like, yeah, this was warranted. I've been waiting to see this. We don't care. I don't care about Erin's quest for revenge, because I'm not.
He did explain
invested.
that she's an empath. That's the thing. She's a force empath, so she feels.
But
more.
just saying that doesn't compel me as the reader to want to read the story.
That seems to be his reasoning, being like, "Oh, hey, every minor emotion you feel, she feels it 10 times because I've said so." That's my excuse for why.
The Battle of Coruscant's a great way to open your book. But earlier I said it should have been the way the book ended, but maybe it could have even been the transition from Act 1 to 2. Yeah. So we spend the first half of. You could still open on something cool, like the Sith War's going on. You could make up a battle.
Well,
it's not that hard.
Zalo would have been. They talk about briefly she fought, or she'd seen Malgus on Alderaan when she was fighting on Alderaan. So you could have Zalo and her fighting alongside on Alderaan and have that
That'd be
set up their
great.
relationship.
That'd be a great set piece, an Alderaan battle, and you could have Zalo and you could have Aaron kind of going back and forth, having a dynamic, very Qui-Gon Jinn kind of Obi-Wan Kenobi thing. That would have given us more time to establish that this girl is volatile. She could fall to the dark side. She's not in control of her emotions. But we didn't get any of that. I just realized
this entire book is that last 2 minutes of the fight in Phantom Menace.
Yes!
That's what the entire book is. Zalo gets stabbed the same way. He gets stabbed through the abdomen. If Disney was there, he would have lived. So that was Aaron's fault for not waiting long enough. Yeah, but he gets stabbed in the abdomen. She feels it, and then she's like, I'm going to get revenge.
I just realised, and it'll be a long time before you get to see this, but Fate of the Jedi does Sith versus Jedi Battle of Coruscant a million times better, and has a proper battle. I thought at the beginning, right, I love Malgus and the Sith against the Jedi in the temple, but it didn't feel like much of a proper battle, because really there should have been like a space battle. The dogfights going off at the top. There should have been more layers to it. Instead, we only get one small part of it.
It's really set up that Coruscant at this point, it's so deep in Republic space, they just didn't even care to defend it. They thought there's no way the Sith are coming here. So when they managed to do it, there's just no defense force. I think they were fighting the police. There was just nothing. There was no army there. Which is why I agree with Aaron. When Aaron's we need to go fight, get the fleet going, and they're like, nah, peace talks. I was on her side, being like, yeah, what the hell are you doing? They just took out your capital.
Bureaucracy.
Very similar happens in Fate of the Jedi. I won't spoil, but very similar happens, and we get a proper.
But they do the smart thing,
it.
and they get the Republic army in, because they said the Republic army could be there in 2 hours or something, but they decided to do peace talks instead.
Yeah, we're only 300 books away from Fate of the Jedi. But
and by then we would have forgotten about this.
I think that you unknowingly explained exactly why this book was so hard to pick up. It's because this book is that 2-minute scene in Phantom Menace dragged out for an entire novel without any of the prior buildup of the relationship. It's a cool book. It's got cool ideas. It's got interesting characters, but its basic premise is not. It's not novel. It was not outlined correctly. I think that's what we're really seeing. We're seeing a book where the outline was mixed mashed, and it feels like it's just not a good idea for a book.
It feels like we start with the end of the last book and get the setup for like the next book.
Yeah, I feel like
in a set
that's
of
what
books.
I
an
was so
exceedingly long
confused with, like,
epilogue.
Revan
Yeah.
sets up the new politics going in, like, hey, we've wiped out all these other guys. We've got the new Emperor's Guard with Scourge. Let's get ready for them. And then there's nothing in this book. Like, this is the second book in the series. Where's Scourge? With the Emperor's mentioned, but Malgus is like, I'm going to kill this lieutenant, and now I'm going to take out the
The
Emperor.
Emperor
Like,
was like,
there's a lot of things,
nothing.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he
We
shows
got
up in
nothing
any of
in
these
the majority
books,
of
though.
that,
I don't think we get any
Yeah.
Emperor. I think that's only in Revan and in the
He's
game.
he's barely in the game until, like, you get right to the end of the original story as well, so kind of lines up. I mean, he's like he's meant to be the big bad that's lurking in the background, so I guess that makes sense.
But yeah,
Apparently, this was off Wikipedia as well. Kemp had also wanted this book to be darker, but he was stopped. But his idea of darkness was that the Sith were going to be using the heads of the Jedi to play a ball game, like after they won at the temple. Which
That's
I
just
think
edgy.
That's just edgy. Yeah, like that's not the same kind of darkness that
That's
Lucina
too-
was going to do. That's just
too
like
funny, I think. That's too
Yeah.
funny. That's just like that's just like
that's just
you
like
know, that's like really silly.
twiddling your mustache, kind of evil. Like
that's not the kind of darkness I think. I mean, I
Exactly.
feel like that's what Disney thinks we're saying when we say
Mm-hmm.
we want like dark storylines. Like, okay, we get it. You want entrails hanging from
That's
the
what they
ceiling.
did in Obi-Wan, right? I feel like that's what I forgot her name, but like that the Inquisitor, like she was the epitome
Reba?
of like what Disney thinks when we want
Yeah.
when we want darkness. Like here's this super edgy character who wants to kill everyone.
No, we want something way darker, which is just an exploration of why bad people do bad things. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's you don't
Like
have
Bane,
to have.
as we keep saying, Bane.
Yeah, Bane.
Yeah.
Because Carpathian is the goat.
As we said, as we said with his backstory, it's fucking horrible. It is so horrible and so.
Path of
uncomfortable,
Destruction's a
and
great book.
Yeah,
by the way.
it
Yeah.
is. I think it's one of the best written Star Wars books ever. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's
What Lucina would have done with Malgus's backstory, I think would have also done a lot to like make you emphasize with Malgus. But clearly that wasn't what they wanted to do. Which is why they went
would've-
with like, oh, he's a psychopath who just wanted to kill his housemaid because he can.
I would have enjoyed the book a lot more if we'd have gotten more like Malgus backstory. If we'd learned
Yeah, and
more
we could
about
have we could have kept him as like this psychopathic killer and still made him interesting because again, James Luceno does it with Sidious in Plagueis. He is such a good and interesting character, but he is a psychopath who has no care for anybody but himself. He doesn't care about his master. He doesn't care about his family. He doesn't care about anybody except for himself. And yet he is such an interesting and well-written character in that book, and his backstory is so good.
True.
Luceno, and it's just, there you go.
All true.
Yeah.
So you know what? Earlier I think we were ragging on Kemp a little bit for his execution, but I think maybe we can try to direct a little bit of that to BioWare for not letting the
Yeah,
kid do
obviously he was
literally
having to
anything.
work within a pretty strict. I mean,
I don't think-
Carpathian, we all agree, is a like really good author, and he wrote Revan.
And that was not
we
good.
all have
Yeah.
already said what we said about Revan, right? So when you have to
Yeah.
work within certain confines, sometimes what comes out is just not going to be good,
Although-
regardless.
I will say I
Which is
don't.
why Lucino left the project, which was the right thing to do.
Yeah, true. Typically, I tend to lean on the side of let the author have as much freedom as you can, but I don't. This book would not have been any better if we'd have gotten a scene of Sith playing with decapitated Jedi heads. Like I
Oh,
would
no,
have,
yeah,
I would have read that.
That
and been
example
like,
of like
"Whoa."
darkness is not. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would
Well,
have
like,
been the book.
Timothy Zahn wanted to write as part of the New Jedi Order, but what he wanted to do would have been so like out of place with the rest of the series. It's probably for the best that we didn't get it. Sometimes again, it's about finding balance, and I feel like we talk about this a lot. I mean, obviously it's a theme in Star Wars, but I think in the media industry there needs to be a balance of creative freedom, and then sometimes you're not the right person for the job. I feel like there needs to be that sometimes.
There is something to be said for an architect that restricts the creative liberties of the creator to a degree to keep things in an overarching picture. I had this video idea. I don't know if I'm going to do it. It's probably going to be like a second channel video, but I had this video idea where I want to talk about I had a title for it. It was like the unrespected or unseen creativity of the MCU, because people always hyper focus on the fact that most of these MCU movies are very formulaic. I've even said it. I think a lot of them are formulaic. I'm not the biggest fan of anything MCU, but I do think that there is a huge level of underrated creativity coming from Feige and the Marvel higher ups to try so hard to keep everything in one canon. You know, they're really trying to make sure everything makes sense. And I think that there is a huge level of creativity that is underappreciated there. I don't think BioWare was doing a very good job with these books, but I do appreciate that they were trying to look at Malgus and be like, hang on, you know, let's not do something that we can't undo, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think they did it well,
That
but I
thing you're
see
talking
what they
about
were
with the
trying to do.
MCU.
And they were trying to set up a universe for fans of the MMO, where when they play the MMO, you know they're going to have that moment being like, oh my god, that's Aaron, oh my god, that's Zered. And, you know, for that reason, I guess they work. Like, if you do like the MMO, I think you will appreciate what they've done here. It's backstory, the characters that aren't
Maybe
very
MMO
prominent
fans
in the
enjoy
game.
this even more.
Yeah. Oh, I will say, Kemp must be a fan of MMA or like a martial artist, because the fight scene descriptions with the MMA, like at the end when it's Zered versus Frath. So this is a non-force user fight. It's the last fight of the book, and it was immediately after Malgus versus Aaron, and I think it was equally as good, even though it was just full on just MMA, because obviously they can't do anything that cool. But I think, yeah, it was really well written, and I really liked there was like this juxtaposition between, they were both soldiers, so they're fighting with based like on physical skill, whereas the force users, the fight was more described for like their emotions that they were using. So I think that was like a really good way of describing like how he made the fights feel different based on like those two approaches.
Yeah,
And it reflects obviously like their respective training.
I am a huge fan of ending stories on physical fist fights. It's why I'm such a big fan of Metal Gear, because Metal Gear Solid 1 and 4 both end on like a fist fight on top of a big thing. And Death Stranding
Daredevil
too,
Season
actually.
3.
Yeah, that's the
Daredevil
best
Season 3.
example. Daredevil Season 3.
Best example, yeah.
I am a huge fan of ending your story on a fist fight, because I think it's the ultimate culmination of because so much of a story is words and trying to get your points across, but that's the ultimate of this is unresolvable, we have to fight. I think that's really cool.
It literally is in the book as well. Like they both just meet in like the corridor of the ship, and they don't say a word, and they just start
just
like
fight,
getting out the business. You just immediately start fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, all
and it's
right.
brutal as well. Like he snaps his elbow in half and stuff.
Kemp knows how to write a fight scene. I'll give him that.
I would say that.
Both in
Definitely.
fight
Most of these
scenes were
Old
very
Republic-
good. Even the opening
Yeah.
I will
fight scene.
say, it's generally the strength of the Old Republic as an era is fight scenes. They're pretty much always, you're guaranteed to have a good time with the action.
And same with the Revan book. Other than the last fight, it was the best parts of that book were like all the fight scenes.
I do think that this book would have benefited from having more action scenes, but up until now I didn't realize, but it takes place in 2 days, and that's not really enough to plausibly fit in.
No.
Like, that's insane.
They already
I don't know
had
why you
like
would do
so
that.
many battles in the first day. Yeah,
You could just
yeah
delete.
you could have just taken out the days. It doesn't mean
I don't know why
nothing,
that's
you know?
there.
Oh yeah.
No,
That's
makes
crazy.
no sense. I guess it's meant to show that like they were only on Coruscant for 3 days, like the Imperials. Maybe that's the point. You're not meant to think like, oh, they were on Coruscant for weeks. Like, no, it's 3 days.
That might have been a BioWare thing, even where BioWare was like, look, you need
Yeah.
to make sure to specify what's going on here to keep consistent with the lore. Otherwise, fans will think that the Empire like was invading Coruscant for weeks or something, which is how it seems. By the
Yes,
way.
add in day 2 did not change that.
All right, fellas, do we have any final thoughts on Star Wars: The Old Republic Deceived by Paul S. Kemp?
It's more of what we said. If you like the MMO, you probably will like something in that. If you've not played the MMO or don't like it, probably not.
It's a decent book, you know. It's enjoyable. It has lots of good things. It's not got anything offensive in. It's just lacking something a little bit more in pretty much every single category.
Okay, I'm about to give my last thoughts on it, which they're not very different for you from yours. But I'm going to ask you both questions for your expertise. Jular, I'll start with you. Based on your experience as someone who breaks down and analyzes games and has a lot of experience with Star Wars games, what do you think that a fan of Star Wars games might get out of this book?
Well, if you like KOTOR, you'll like the references to a lot of the force powers do line up with in the game. Force speed actually has a very interesting one. If you remember in force speed in the KOTOR games, and actually in a lot of the games, makes everything blur really fast, and that's pretty much how it's described actually in the book, where Aaron is moving so fast that to Zered, she's a blur that just zooms across and she's in multiple spaces at once. Kind of like how Quicksilver works in the X-Men films, but to her, the universe stays still. which I guess is kind of how it works. So, there's definitely parallels you can make, especially to like the RPG, to the Kotor games. Actually, less so to SWOTO, I would say, because SWOTO's gameplay is so different from how any action scene in the book should be described, that it actually is much closer to the Kotor games. But if you're a fan of the games, the fight scenes are cool. It's just that the middle part is so character driven that the games often aren't. I mean, Kotor is obviously an exception there, but as we've already said, we didn't seem to care that much about the character driven sections as much as we care about Kotor. So maybe it doesn't appeal that much to them.
All right, great answer. Gabriel, my question for you, being such a fan of the books, specifically NJO and Legends material, what do you think fans of NJO era books would have to gain from this, or that they might enjoy from it?
I think a bit more of a different take on the Jedi. I think like one of the strengths of like the New Jedi Order is you get all the conflict between Jedi and the idea of like Jedi of a different time compared to where we've seen them before. And you do get that here, although they share a lot more similarities with the prequel era Jedi because the prequels were out and it's supposed to be closer. There's so much like. There's so many of them. You definitely get this idea that there's a lot of, so much Jedi and Sith in this period, like an unbelievable amount. And there's definitely stuff like that, I think, could appeal to you. And, us EU fans, we love a lot of Sith and lots of, like, Sith and Jedi and stuff like that. But I honestly think, so, like, if you haven't played the game, you're probably not going to get too much out of it. Like, for example, I've tried the MMO over and over, and this is not the type of game that I enjoy. I don't think I'm going to get into it. I didn't really get an idea of what the game's like is like, what the game period is like, and what that story is like. I felt like I was almost expected to know some of that stuff, and I think, like I said, for the people that enjoy my content or people that enjoy the same stuff as me, it might not be for them. But I think if you are like just a reader, as I know a lot of people who, they watch the films and they like to read the books, maybe they don't play the games. If you want to get an idea of these games, maybe give it a go. Like if you want to know more about Malgus, maybe give it a go. But I don't think it's, for example, like my type of book when it comes to Star Wars novels. It is not what I want out of a Star Wars book. It's not what I love. It's a solid, fine novel, and I think there'll be people out there who it is for. People, if you love that MMO, if you really love the characters, then you might really enjoy this because you'll care that much more about the characters in the period. But if you're into the same stuff as me, you might not. It might not be for you, is what I would say.
Good answer. I think my thoughts on the book are. Just to reiterate all the stuff we've basically already said, it's got such a cool opening. It might even be worth just reading the first chapter and then not reading the rest of the book. I hate to say that. That seems like a terrible thing to say for a full book, but the first chapter alone is almost worth reading as if it's like a short story set in the Old Republic. The rest of the book, you have to commit to being compelled by... I would say first two chapters, but the rest of it you have to be compelled by this story of revenge that hasn't really earned your empathy to care about it, and that's really hard. Great fight scenes, but I think it's a little too long to justify reading through it just to get the fight scenes. I've read better from Kemp personally. I think his Jaden Core work is better than this. To be real with you, I think the Jaden Core duology, the first one, the second one was a little weaker, but I think the first one's better than this book is. But the descriptions of Coruscant are cool. The brief stint of Sith and Jedi negotiations and politics in the second chapter, I think, are cool. I couldn't get into the characters. I didn't really care about Aaron as a character. I didn't care about what's his name, Zirin. I've read it a billion.
Yeah.
Zirin.
The names, honestly, the names are not memorable, any of them.
They blur.
We've been saying Liana for it. It's actually Elena.
Elena?
Like the name of the Twi'lek. Elena. Yeah, that's the name of the Twi'lek.
I couldn't even tell you. Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
They blur together, yeah, and it wouldn't matter anyway because I don't care about these characters. I care about Malgus specifically because he looks cool, and I wanted this book to make me care about him because of who he is, and beyond, he has a Twi'lek slave that he's in love with somehow. I didn't find anything else like compelling about his character. I would say Aaron's kind of back and forth and immaturity and struggle to reconcile with growing up and becoming a Jedi was cool, but I think that story could have been told better than it was if the book was more focused. Overall, the plot of this book feels very unfocused. It feels kind of disjointed, and I'm not sure it really knows what it wants to be. So it's a rough one to recommend. I think it's a better. I would rather read the Revan book, but only because I think it knows more of what it's trying to be, even if it's more insulting to its source material. This is a significantly more inoffensive book than the Revan book is. And you guys know I liked the Revan book when we started the last episode. It was only after I realized, wow, this book is really offensive to the source material that I now don't like it as much. But I would rather read that again than read Siege.
I think I would as well. As much as I have
it's a more interesting
hatred
read
towards parts of Revan, I would rather read it again and talk about it. Like, I would be more excited to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to redo Revan. I'm going to analyze it, and I'm going to say why I don't like it. Maybe I'll come around to some things. I would be more excited to do that than to revisit this book, which for example, like if I had to read this book in like a month's time, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it again. I just don't think I could manage it.
I know, Julia, you said you don't think you ever will read this again.
No, I don't think I'll ever read it again. I will say I remember parts of the Revan book. I don't think I'll remember much about this by the next episode of this podcast, to be honest.
I don't either.
It's very unmemorable other than the Coruscant battle.
We've talked a lot about things that presumably BioWare wouldn't let the authors do in this book, and that honestly, it comes across because this book is not, it doesn't do anything. And that's the worst part about it. It's not a bad book, but it doesn't accomplish anything, and it's not worth reading because you're not going to gain anything from it. That's my thoughts.
The only time I can see myself revisiting it is if I finally, if I give the MMO another shot one day and enjoy it. If I get really into it and play it, then I would think, okay, maybe I'll give it another shot to experience these characters I know a little bit better, but. Honestly, like with my, not really being able to get into that game many times, I just don't really see that happening. Again, it's not like we really think this is an awful book. It's just not that. There's not that much to it.
Mm-hmm. I think you should.
It's like a glass of water. A glass of water is great. You should have it. You're never really looking forward to it unless you really haven't had anything better.
Yeah. Gabriel, when you tried the Old Republic MMO,
fine.
Did you try it with friends or did you try it by yourself?
I've done both.
You didn't enjoy either time?
No.
Damn.
No, not particularly.
Because
I found it better to play on my own because it's so story driven. When I was playing with friends, I've missed so much.
True. Well, you have to play with friends who are as compelled by the story as you and who aren't fucking around. But that is the optimal way to play.
I have a friend who I tried it with who loved it growing up, and he still enjoyed it now. But he said, as someone that enjoys it, walking simulator. That's how it feels for me a lot of the time.
Yeah, very grindy.
I just can't. Yeah, and I don't like that generally.
What you were saying about rereading the book if you played the game, maybe there is a certain order. Like people say, like, oh, you should watch like New Hope, Emperor Strikes Back, and then you watch the prequels so you can see like how that revelation happens and everything. I guess you could play the MMO the same way. Like once you find Zerid and Aaron on Dantooine, now you read this book, so you get the whole backstory, and then you jump into that quest. Like maybe there's something like that, because then you would be more compelled.
To read you would actually play the game.
I know, but you would care. You would care. You would care about Aaron and Zerid. It's like, oh, I've just met them in the game. What's their backstory? How did they get together?
Guys,
that's a good theory. That's.
Well, I actually had similar by when I was playing Halo. And I played a couple Halo games, and then before going much further, I read some books because I was interested enough in Master Chief, and it meant that when certain characters, as much as I hated Halo 5 and stuff like that, and when I was playing Halo 4 and I was seeing Dr. Halsey, I was like, oh my god, I just read about this person and I really like them.
Yeah,
that was interesting to me, but
Actually made you like Halo 4, so I guess they did their job.
Well, the problem with that, though,
game.
is if you read The Fall of Reach, you'll like Halo Reach less. At least in my experience.
Yeah, that's why I played Reach a while ago. I've read The Fall of Reach, and I've not played Reach since.
That's an example where the Reach is worse if you read The Fall of Reach.
I mean, the battle of Reach in the book is so good.
It's
I love
much
the way
better
it's told.
than the way it's portrayed in the game. I don't know if that was technical limitations or not, but we're on Halo time. All right, we got to wrap up this episode. It's been 2 hours. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and watching. Presumably, we're off hiatus unless something happens. We've already got our topics lined up for the next few episodes, so we're going to have some very cool things ready to go for you guys pretty soon. If you haven't already, you should go subscribe to the main channel for this podcast. We go live on my channel, but I re-upload the VODs to the main channel where maybe, if it ever pops off, we'll start doing the live streams there. I don't know. We'll see. But shorts and stuff will come there as well. Check out Jular and Gabriel's YouTube channels and Twitter accounts linked in the description. And I don't really have an outro for this, but we'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm going to turn up the outro music, and we're out of here.
Thank you.